Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find my work on Twitter at Sheng_Peng and at NBC Sharks.
I'm Keegan McNally. You can find me on Twitter at @halfwall_hockey, my website, #wallhockey.com, or at San Jose Hockey Now. We're officially changing the name of this podcast to the Celebrini Hockey Now podcast. The San Jose Sharks have won the 2024 NHL Draft Lottery. That's why I'm wearing a jersey this week, because I am so excited. I've never been more excited about an NHL draft ever, I think, actually. This is it.
If you missed it, Keegan did a live stream of the draft lottery, and his celebration was epic. So check that out if you haven't seen it.
I was so stressed. I was sitting here at this desk, and just like my hands around my head, like I can't wait to get it revealed. And 250 people showed up and watched it all at the same time. Some people from like Japan, Germany,
Really?
Sweden. They said like hi from all these places. I think it's because I was maybe doing a little bit of free streaming for people to watch. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. We'll try and do more live streams in the future for big events like that, because it was a lot of fun. But yes, we are the likely new home of Macklin Celebrini in about 2 months from now.
So. A little more than likely. And I myself, I was at the draft lottery. I was watching it. I'll tell you guys have a lot of questions about it, and I will answer all of them in a little bit.
And this week, to celebrate the end of to Celebrini, the end of a long season, we're going to do another subscriber mailbag. This will be our longest and most questions we've ever done in a subscriber mailbag. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So buckle up, y'all. It's going to be a very fun episode full of Celebrini questions.
Just a little note. There are a few of you that I asked you guys online to verify subscriptions, that sort of thing. Sorry to be the gatekeeper to that, but I want to make sure that this is a reward for the subscribers that support me and to support my ability to travel to places like the draft lottery and whatnot. And so anyway, if you are a subscriber and I made a mistake of not answering your question, please let me know. You can let me know at my email, sjhockeynow@gmail.com, or even my personal email, shengpeng@gmail.com. Or you can DM me on Twitter, and we'll take care of your question in one way or another.
Yep, and we'll answer it in a future episode. And let's dive in. This is a long train of questions, but let's get to it. Right. All right. So our first question is going to be from Sharksmustbealways. It's we haven't heard much about the Sharks coaching search. Were they waiting to see if landing Celebrini would attract more sought-after coaches? Were they waiting for the draft lottery to hire a new coach? What do you think, Sheng?
I don't think so, just because the draft lottery, by the time of the draft lottery on Tuesday, I don't think that any coach had even been hired yet, any of all the many openings. Mm-hmm. So I think it's more of a coincidence. For sure, having Celebrini makes the job more attractive, but I don't think that they were necessarily waiting.
Yeah, it's also just an awkward time. Like, teams are still playing. There could be still more firings.
Assistant coaches that are still in the playoffs, things like that.
Yeah, so your full pool of options is not available yet, and nobody else is hiring just yet. So there's like talk about who people want to hire, but it's just the domino.
I think right now only Travis Green has been hired, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
Has it been official, or is it just Twitter official, Darren Dreger official? I don't know even if he's had his press conference yet.
Yeah, I feel like it might just be rumored / confirmed, but hasn't been announced yet. Kind of
right.
We have a similar question from A Morris 209. But how does drafting Celebrini, now that we're going to draft Celebrini, affect the process for the coaching search in the future?
I think for sure it doesn't really change in a lot of ways. You're still looking for a developmental coach. You're looking for somebody not to just work with a Celebrini, but with Will Smith, with William Eklund, with Fabian Zetterberg, with Shakir Mukumodu. And you want a good development coach, someone who can build a connection with players like that, but obviously someone too that can also connect with the veterans on a team, that will be there to support your younger players, guys like Nico Sturm and whatnot, Mikhail Granlund. So I don't know if it changes too much. I know there's some talk that drafting Celebrini accelerates the Sharks timeline a little bit. Maybe it does by maybe like a year, maybe, and just in the sense that Celebrini, you expect him to arrive as a top NHL player sooner than, say, Artem Lashudnov. If you were drafting Lashudnov 2 or 3, if you're the Sharks, right? You expect Celebrini, if not this coming year, 2-3 years, to be a impactful player. So in that sense, maybe a little bit, but I don't think much, though. I think you're still looking for about the same things that you were before you won a draft lottery.
Yeah, I think this job just became a lot more attractive. I'll say that. I feel like it just was. It probably injected a little life into the coaching or maybe potential hires. But I don't think it changes who they're going to look for, like you said, somebody with good developmental background.
Yeah, the type, players.
Right? Mm-hmm. Exactly. All right. We have a question. We have a couple questions from Jigglz, but we chose an interesting one. Jigglz decided to ask about Tim Kawakami, who's a reporter for The Athletic.
He's actually, I believe he's the editor of the. I should know this for sure, but he's the editor of the entire Bay Area athletic side of things. Well-known reporter for years, though. I think mostly the Warriors, but yeah.
Yeah, so he mostly Warriors, and he put out a basically it's a Mailbag, actually, I think, article recently that Jigglz is referencing, but he's basically saying Tim Kawakami's been vocal that Hasso Plattner, being an absentee owner, has hurt the Sharks in the Bay Area. Do you think Hasso being more present would be more helpful or hurtful to the Sharks? And then basically, what are the considerations here for Hasso Plattner's absentee ownership, I guess is a way to put it?
Yeah, and let me pull the entire quote from Tim, so we have it correct. Because I know Sharks fans were a little bit up at arms at what Tim said. So Tim was asked in the mailbag, is there any reason Hasso Plattner never bothers showing his face as the owner of the Sharks? Seems like he's never even in San Jose, and it's somebody from the Athletic, Jason S. And this is how Tim answered the question. Maybe Plattner will start showing up now that they've got the number 1 pick and will draft Macklin Celebrini. I mean, if the owner starts actually showing that he cares, maybe that's a sign that we can all start caring about the Sharks again. So, burn there. I think Celebrini might be good enough to get all of that rolling, and that's good, or rolling, and that's good. The Sharks deserve some good things to happen after a long, dark spell. And for me personally, I do think that is a little unfair in the sense that I think Hasso definitely cares. And I would say that it's some irony that it's Tim saying this, because if you guys recall, not just to plug an article from on my website, but I published an article from Corey Masisak about Hasso Plattner. And Hasso Plattner, Corey did extensive reporting trying to meet up with Hasso Plattner. Hasso doesn't like to talk to reporters or whatnot. So Corey was not able to talk with Hasso directly. But Corey went, this is during the Sharks trip to Germany last year. Corey went to Hasso's home, where Hasso currently resides in Germany, Potsdam, talking to people around the town there. Hasso has basically bankrolled a museum or two there. And so Corey also spoke with Hasso's employees, basically his museum employees and whatnot. And everybody that Corey talked to was resounding in just how much they respect Hasso Plattner. And there's no sense that there was no sense given the story that I would assume that Tim approved. I don't know, maybe Tim never read it because that story was meant for the Athletic, but Corey unfortunately was let go by the Athletic before that story ever saw light. That's how it ended up at San Jose Hockey Now. But anyway, so that was Tim's, not to set it against Tim versus Corey because it's not about that, but that was Tim's Sharks reporter writing about Hasso Plattner, how much Hasso Plattner cares not just about the Sharks, but about art, about the town that he's living in, Potsdam. And one of the conclusions that Corey seems to draw in the story, and we also talked with Corey after that story came out actually on this podcast, and Corey talked about how it seemed like Hasso, for a billionaire, was actually a pretty well-liked guy for a billionaire, all things considered. And so I think that it is. I think it's a bit of a low blow. It's a cheap shot to say that just because Hasso isn't there, he doesn't care, because I think he does care, and we can see it by how Hasso is always willing to. The Erik Karlsson contract is an example of Hasso caring and signing Erik Karlsson to an 8-year contract to make him the highest paid defenseman in the league. Because at the time, Doug Wilson thought that was the piece that was going to put the Sharks over the top. Obviously, it didn't work out that way, but still, that is an example of Hasso Plattner caring. And there's never been, as far as I know, a significant free agent that the Sharks let go strictly because of money. Even Joe Pavelski, that wasn't strictly because of money. That was because of age, salary cap, things like that, right? But not if Doug wanted something. Every sense I've gotten is that Hasso gave the okay to get it.
They were in on like Tavares too. Like that was the when he was a UFA, they were in giving him a pretty good, well, theoretical or rumored pretty good deal.
Right, and if I'm not mistaken, Hasso was at the pitch meeting to Tavares too. Now, one thing Tim does say that is very fair, and I've said this to Sharks PR before. I have never spoken personally to Hasso myself either. My only Hasso story is that during the 2019 playoffs, after a Sharks win, I know I saw him walking down the hallway, and I should have said something to him then, but that's the only time I've ever seen him. But I've told Jonathan Becker this too, I'm pretty sure before too, that it would behoove Hasso, especially when the team is not doing well, to maybe talk once a year, once every couple of years, that sort of thing, right? Just the interview, not just give the exclusive to Sheng at San Jose Hockey Now, but maybe to Bay Area media in general, and just what's going on with the Sharks. What does he think? That sort of thing. I think that would be good. That wouldn't hurt at all. Sure. And so I think that he could stand to do something like that. Like I said, not even every year, but every couple of years. That would be good. Good times and bad, even. I think that would be a good, consistent thing for owner to do. Not just Hasso, but ownership. It is good for ownership to show their face every once in a while. So I totally agree with that. According to Corey's story, though.
Go ahead. No, I was going to make a joke, but I was going to say it'd be also great if Hasso would sponsor this podcast, and that would be an easy way to connect with Sharks fans. Hasso Plattner, sponsor your favorite San Jose Hockey Now podcast.
I would take that SAP money on this podcast.
I would. Absolutely.
But anyway, finally, I want to say that in Corey's story, Corey mentions that Hasso has been going to more games because Hasso apparently has sort of stepped away a little bit from what he's been doing at SAP, semi-retirement or whatnot. I believe that's described in the story. And anyway, that Hasso has been at SAP Center more this past season, which is maybe why this is just me speculating, but maybe why David Quinn got the hook, because Hasso just couldn't believe what he was watching on the ice this season. Who knows? But if that's correct, though, in terms of just Hasso being around more, then well, there you go. So he's not on NBC waving his waving for the camera. He's not that kind of guy. Probably specifically has probably said, like, if you see me on camera, don't put me on TV. I would guess that, because if he didn't say that, why wouldn't NBC put him if they caught him in a cutaway, right? They put Mike Grier on a cutaway, right? And so anyway, if he's been around more too, then that's another sign. I mean, that's him showing his face. But yes, though, I think that it would be great if, even out with media, I mean, even if it's at some Sharks season ticket holder event, so fans can see him, because there is a perception out there that Tim does kind of feed on here, and it's a pretty large kind of it's a large kind of sentiment that Hasso doesn't care. I do know that some fans think that just because they don't see him around. And like I said, I disagree with that, but I do think it is fair that, in the sense that if you don't put yourself out there, you open yourself to that kind of criticism. And again, I'm not suggesting that Hasso needs to be Mark Cuban, needs to sit by the glass, or needs to be shown every game sitting there in a luxury box, but it would behoove him. I think it would help him to be out there every couple years ago. Again, not even for us, but like I said, season ticket holder event, say hi to the fans, all that kind of stuff. That would be good.
I have this theory in general that and this is probably going to tank our chances for Hasso to sponsor this podcast.
No, shut up.
But that billionaires are like fundamentally weird people. Like if you've ever like watched documentaries on billionaires, if you've ever watched like Drive to Survive, where the Lawrence Stroll, who is the Aston Martin like manager essentially, or owner, or whatever you have it, he has a son, Lance Stroll, who is driving for them, despite Lance Stroll not being an amazing driver. But they're just fundamentally weird people, and like that's how involved they could be. Is like you're the owner / like manager / your son is driving for the team, or you're like Hasso Plattner, where it's like you're kind of just somewhere. And like I think it's funny because when the Sharks were winning, all I remember hearing about Hasso Plattner was, it's great. We never have to like listen to his demands. He gives Doug Wilson whatever he wants. Like he lets him, get whatever free agents and spend it to the cap every single year. What's there to complain about? Like I remember it being like, oh, this is a really good relationship and a good way to run a team. And now that the Sharks are losing, it's like, just had to Hasso give a shit? It's like, I mean, I think he just wants the team to be good again. So
yeah,
I'm happy that
I would behoove him though, like win or lose, to talk every couple of years. And I should actually tease Mark Purdue with this. I believe the last time that we did see public comments from Hasso about the Sharks was with Mark Purdy, maybe in 2015. I think so. Yeah, in the Mercury News, when Mark was still writing for the Mercury News, and maybe Mark said something to him. So
yeah, I don't know. I think billionaires are just weird people in general.
Yeah, they march by their own drum. They don't need to. They don't need to had bands for season ticket holder money. So
no, they can do whatever they want.
Show up or don't, I guess.
And I think I'm happy that the Sharks got Celebrini. I think it will put some life back into Hasso's future plans with the Sharks.
Okay.
I like it. All right, Jamnjon said, I know the Sharks have a decent number of smaller prospects in the pipeline. This is true. Despite that, do you think it would make sense for them to take a run at smaller guys who fall, like a guy like Alexander Zetterberg or Justin Poirier? If they're available at pick 116, should we gamble on them? What about pick number 85? I like Alexander Zetterberg, and I think I have a feeling that he goes like end of second, early third. So probably before pick 85. He's like he's 5'8", he's tiny. He's going to BU next year. So he's leaving Sweden and going to Boston University next year.
Oh, sure sign. That's a Mike guy. So.
Yeah, that's a Mike guy. But he's really good. Like he's a very maybe he's not that physical. He might be a Mike guy, but he's not that physical. But he's got great skating. He's very skilled. He dominated Swedish juniors, which doesn't mean too much, but he's got enough there that despite his size, he's worth it, especially in this draft. I don't think it's the absolute strongest draft. So around the end of the second, early third, I think he's a good pickup, which is probably out of the Sharks' range unless they trade back or something like that. And then the other guy I want to mention as a smaller guy is a familiar name, Cole Hutson. So Cole is the brother of Lane Hutson, who was drafted in the end of the second in 2022, and then had like fantastic years in college before joining the NHL at the end of last year. And also grew 2 inches famously, went from 5'8" to like 5'10" now, turning into like
medical research. He brought all that to the draft.
Yeah, so Lane Hutson brought his bone age charts and bone age doctor's notes, basically saying, hey, I'm going to grow 2 inches. Look at like my family history. Look at like where it's very complicated medically, but your bones fuse at different ages. And you can tell
Keegan's a doctor. You can trust him.
Yeah. So I'm not a pediatrician. I'm not a geneticist or whatever, but I know about bone age. But basically your bones fuse at different times, and you can tell how tall someone's likely to be based on when their bones start to fuse, like for different bones in their body. So that's how, like, when he was mentioning, like when Lane Hutson was mentioning those things, I was like, oh shit, he might actually grow. And he did. And the reason why I'm mentioning all this is Cole Hutson's 5'10". He might grow, like I don't know, because I don't know his bone age. I don't know his charts, but like if he's similar to his brother, he might still grow. And then you get a 5'11", 6-foot defender who's pretty good with the puck out of it. I don't think he's as good as his brother. So there's that. And I think he goes in the second because I think teams are going to take him just based on what his brother's done in college. And also that he's pretty good. And he had a great U18s as well. So anyway, all that's to say, 2 small guys, take a run at him. Don't go too crazy. Don't go like Cole Hudson, number 14, something like that. But there's something there, I think.
I would add too that I think that we have to be careful with when we talk about the Sharks seem to want more size, that it's a leaning towards a preference thing. So more so than say Doug Wilson Jr. under Doug, maybe, but not so much so that would prevent them from drafting Luca Cagnoni last year, or even a Macklin Celebrini, who's not the biggest guy, right? And so we have to be careful with that. And so for sure, I'm a smaller guy. Would be in the picture, especially if you get later in a draft that's not so deep. Then you start taking shots on guys that have noticeable flaws, but obvious traits too. That if you can kind of paper over their flaw a little bit or flaws, that they can become legitimate NHL contributors.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what happened with Gushchin, right? Like he fell to the middle third or wherever he was.
Well, but that was in the middle of the Sharks' small.
Yeah,
small
no, I meant
being smaller.
Even to get him to
5 tiny forwards in that draft, right?
Yeah, so I think he would actually probably go a little bit higher in that draft now. Because like he's done well afterwards. But the point is like teams let him fall basically to that point, and then somebody grabbed him.
Right. It could be the reverse though, because in that draft, Brandon Cole 6'4" was the outlier. So maybe things are a little more reverse with the Sharks, where the outlier is going to be the Cagnoni type or Alexander Zetterberg. But there's still going to be a space for a guy like that for sure, though.
Yeah, you just have to pick the right player, and Zetterberg is one of those guys. Cagnoni is. So I wouldn't say that they're going to rule out anything. Like at some point, Cagnoni at 123, I think they got him at, was like stupidly good value in hindsight.
Right. They weren't going to use the pick they used on Swoboda, which we'll see how that works out. But they weren't going to use it on Cagnoni. But once they got to the 120s, hey, this guy's still around. Okay.
Yeah, pick him. And the same thing might happen this year as well. So not against it for any reason.
Yeah.
All right. Rob S had a lot of questions.
Yes.
We've picked 3, I think, total.
Yes,
Rob S. Basically was saying, Sheng, how did you get selected to watch the lottery in person? More generally, how does the NHL decide who to invite? Was it due to San Jose having the best odds? Was it an attempt to counter any Chicago conspiracy talk? Or do you know someone in high places? Are you a good luck charm?
It's actually a lot of those things combined. Basically, from what I understand, I basically was contacted by the NHL on Friday, I think, before the draft. The really last second, they sent me an email and asked, "Hey, do you want to watch the draft lottery?" And I talked with them. From what I understood, last year they also invited a few people too. It's a really small room, like in my story, so it wouldn't fit a lot of people to begin with. But last year, I believe Daily Faceoff, Frank Saravalli was there. Stephen Wino from the AP was there. I think they had somebody from NHL.com there last year too. They did, yeah. I don't remember who, but anyway, though, and that's pretty much all it could fit. It wasn't a matter of could they invite more or not. That's really all they could fit. And this year it was myself, it was Greg Wyshynski, ESPN,
friend of the show.
Yes, friend of the show, Greg Wyshynski, and Mike Morial of NHL.com. He's their draft guy. He's one of the big draft guys for them there. So anyway, so they reached out to me to see if it was feasible for me to do. And tracking back on it, from what I understood, they asked the Sharks who in their sort of reporters course could they ask. And so the Sharks suggested myself. I don't know if they suggested anybody else, but they suggested me. And so the NHL reached out to me to ask. And I then reached out to NBC to see if they were interested in such a story, and they were. And so big shout out to NBC Sharks. We talked about investing in the sports, spending money on hockey, spending money on Sharks. NBC, they flew me out to New York. They put me up in a hotel. So if you're not supporting the rights holders here, NBC Sharks, try to. And I try to write good stories for them too. So try to read my stories there too. And so big shout out to them for sending me out there. And so once I got that kind of squared away, that I had support to fly out there, I had a place to stay or whatever, right? So from that point on, okay, great. And then I found out later that they asked Greg too. And I assumed that the reason why I came up or the reason why a San Jose reporter came up was obviously because the Sharks had the best odds. I don't know about last year. Last year they won with, again, 2 national guys in Frank and Steven, but it probably depends every year. I don't know if they did it before that though, in terms of having reporters there. I think last year might have been the first year, and I was told that yes, it is to combat kind of the conspiracy talk. It is for hopefully trusted reporters to watch the process and draw their own conclusions from it. And they don't tell us what to write or whatnot. And granted, they are hiring people that make the NHL their living. So the likelihood of one of us saying, "Oh, this is rigged. This is completely rigged. Oh my God, what a sham," is not likely. But we also probably did not reach our positions. I'm talking about the reporters, if we aren't being fairly objective and even-handed and all that sort of things that I pride myself on, and I think the other reporters that I've mentioned that they pride themselves on too, being fairly even-handed and objective and all that kind of stuff. And so it is to definitely add legitimacy to the events. Though, for what it's worth, though, there's also a video. They film a video of the actual draft lottery, and they put it on after the draft. And you've seen it. It's Gary Bettman announcing, not Bill Daly. Because if you didn't read the story that I wrote, the actual draft lottery is held in a tiny room an hour before the TV reveal. And from what I understand, the main reasons for that is kind of like a TV. There's no specific reason that was given by the NHL why they do that, but a lot of it is just because they want to preserve the TV drama for made for TV show. So it's scripted for the TV show. But I think though there is a push toward putting it all live again, and then kind of drawing how you say, dragging it out a little bit so it's still dramatic, even with the live lottery balls and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's if they do it exactly like they do it in that room, like if you read in my story, everything is done in like 5 minutes or whatever, right? It's not that dramatic because everything goes so fast. Balls are picked every 20 seconds, and that's too fast to catch up with the sheet, the combination sheet for the winner. So if they do something where they pick the first 3 numbers fast, they go to commercial break, and then that fourth ball, they have some lead up to it, and they have somebody that is telling us, a John Butchergross or a Kevin Weeks last year, telling us if this number is a 4, that means that the Blackhawks win it. If this number is a 1, 9, 7, or 10, the Sharks win it, something like that, right? To kind of break it down, kind of add drama to that. Then maybe that could work for the TV aspect. So to combine the live part, so that might quiet some of the conspiracy theorists. Though I still don't think that will quiet. People really love their conspiracies, especially in this day and age. So I'm not sure about that part of it. But anyway, though, so it was a big part to, they want independent reporters to view it. So we can say that it is not rigged, and I can say that, and I never believed that it was, of course, but I watched the process and I looked on the up and up. So San Jose won with 3 combinations with all mostly different balls. And so even the balls were weighed somehow, it's kind of weighed I don't think so. That's weighed in a pretty ridiculous way for San Jose to win it.
Yeah, that's insane.
3 times in a row, right? So
yeah.
So I think that pretty much answers all of Rob's questions on that, right? So
yeah, I think so. And
yes, okay.
You were selected for your journalistic integrity, I think. And
I think so. I like to think so.
Yeah, and I think that's and because we won, I don't think it's rigged. If we lost, it's definitely rigged, and I would expect the story out there.
No,
I'm kidding.
No, yeah, I of course that would never change my mind on it if the Sharks had lost it. But it is good though, because if the Sharks had lost it, I would be blamed for it. I'm getting undue praise and undeserved credit for the Sharks.
You know what? Take it when you can get it.
I have nothing to do with it. But
thanks our good
I
luck
also
charm
would have nothing to do with it. The Sharks had lost it too. So.
All right. Rob S. also asked, let's assume the Sharks are competitive in 2 to 3 years. Bold assumption, but let's do it. They make the playoffs in 3 to 4 years and are contenders in 6 or so years. Who is the Sharks goalie in that future? Is there a goalie on their roster or in the system that fits that time frame? Do they draft boatloads of goalies? Do they make a trade at some point? Honestly, a lot of these could happen. I think my interpretation of the way that the Sharks goaltending is working is they're trying out different guys to see if any of them are a long-term fit. but still pretty young. I think Vanacek and Blackwood are 27 or 28.
Yeah, relatively young.
Relatively young, so they could go for a couple more years as competitive goalies, probably longer if they are truly number ones. But I think they're not committed in any way yet. Like they're trying to find that goaltender, but they're just going to keep cycling through guys until one of them fits, I think is the way to put it. And I do think that hopefully they draft a goaltender this year. Not that like they need to, but we don't have a lot of prospects for goaltending in the system. So
right.
I think eventually they keep exploring the market.
I think that you put it very well, that they are uncommitted at this point. Obviously, you can see that in the durations of Vanacek and Blackwood's contracts. Blackwood, I think they're both actually free agents at the end of next year. So if one of them impresses, especially at Blackwood, because that'll be 2 good years in San Jose for him, then maybe that might lead to something long term. But I don't think they really have any idea. I know that they wanted to draft a goalie last year, it just didn't work out in the spots that they were at. So I would think that would be, again, something that they look at this coming year. But unfortunately, though, it doesn't look like the strongest year in net this year. But they still might draft somebody. And in terms of just drafting boatloads of goalies, I think of Step Brothers, and this may not be appropriate for the podcast, but boats and hose.
Boatloads of goalies,
or boatloads if you want to edit it, the family friendly version of it. But basically, yes, they need to keep taking shots at people. Taking shots at your Kronas,
Sure.
Well, they took a shot at Makiniemi. That looks like that may not work out. But you got to take those shots, Romanov, guys like that, right? So you got to keep doing that and hope that one of them works out. And that's exactly what other teams do. And so it might come through trade too. It might have to come down to trade in the future. You may not want that because you got to give up assets for whoever might come free. Volstead, if he ever becomes free, or if somebody is blocked by somebody, if Nashville sticks with Saros, then like Askarov, right? But you don't want to do that because that means trading something away. But it might come to that. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully they figure it out before them. But it is very much, and again, I think you put it great, that it is uncommitted. I don't think the Sharks have a goalie of the future right now. You have a couple of hopefuls in Blackwood and Vanacek and Krona and Romanov, but I think that if we're being honest, that there's just as good a chance that those guys are not with the Sharks at the end of next, by next off season.
That's fair.
So we'll see. It's still definitely a work in progress.
Yeah. It used to be the old adage was like build from the net out, but I don't know if teams really do that anymore these days.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. I've written about this, about goalies are sort of like the running back, the NFL running back, in terms of they're sort of replaceable. You just need a league average guy. If you end up with a special guy like a Hellebuck, Shesterkin, or whatever, then you keep
Derek
that guy,
Henry.
you prize that guy. Derek Henry, for when he was in his prime, right? Sure.
Yeah.
But otherwise, though, you can get by with average and just sort of
just kind of
make do with that.
Along.
Yeah, Aiden Hill, right? To be honest. So.
Yeah, Aiden Hill's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, the Kings thought this was wrong, but the Kings thought they can roll into the season this year with freaking Talbot, Riddick, and Copley, which I looked at as like, what are you guys doing? Are you guys trying to win?
Yeah.
But that's sort of the extreme of that philosophy where you're really saying like, hey, we can build a great defensive team, plays 1-3-1, we have enough scorers, we're going to win games, and we're going to protect our goalie and make our goalie's life easier, and then we're going to go deep in the playoffs.
And Talbot had made the All-Star team
he did.
And Talbot, which is kind of crazy.
I think he made it when they announced the team. He was having a good season. By the time we got to the All-Star break,
he was awful.
He had been in like a 3-week slump or something like that. But anyway.
Also, what bothers me about Copley is his name is spelled wrong. His first name is Phoenix instead of Phoenix.
What's your problem with that?
I don't know. It's spelled wrong. It's not the way you spell Phoenix, like in any way. It's just like you just misspelled the word Phoenix, and that's how Phoenix Copley is spelled. So he's Phoenix Copley. It just bothers me. No, I'm sure he's a nice guy. I've never talked to Phoenix Copley.
I heard actually great things about him. Yes,
I'm sure he's a nice guy. But I wanted to bring that up anyway. All right, Rob S.'s last question, or one of his last questions. We chose 3 of your 5.
It is his last one, but this is a quick one, though.
Will the Sharks host a game at Tech CU ever? He said he had attended the Sharks game against Arizona at the Mullet. It was awesome.
Right, it's
Tight
great. It
environment.
was great there. I went to 2 games there.
Given that the Sharks' ticket population is at an all-time low, is there a chance they do a Tech CU arena game? Interesting.
I don't see the benefit of it though. The Coyotes were only in Mullet because there's frankly no other choice, right?
Yeah.
And financially, there's no benefit to that. I think, though, in terms of even though they were able to sell out there, I don't think they made more money than they made at even
Bettman
at
said he
Gila
was.
River or Jobbing or whatever they call that arena out in Glendale, because you just have less people there. And so I just don't see, it's nice for atmosphere, but that's the only reason why. The only thing I think that could be fun is if they ever do like a scrimmage between the Barracuda and the Sharks. And then have that text, and that would be a fun environment. I mean, they had the Patrick Marleau alumni game there, HL All-Star game, obviously another big event they had there, and it's a great atmosphere for sure. But I don't see any reason for that financially, which is obviously a big part of it, the financial part of it. And
Alex,
I'm not seeing it.
Gary Bettman in the Alex Morello press conference, they asked him like, was they losing money at Mullet Arena? Like, what was the big deal? And I think Gary Bettman, to put it bluntly, was like, he's losing boatloads of money or something like that.
Boats and hose.
No, it was something like that. It was actually pretty embarrassing because like Gary Bettman was just like whispered it, or like he's like he was losing a ton of money or something like that. And I was like, God, why is this Morello's dirty laundry being aired on here? But anyway, I think you're right. Financially, there's just not enough. Even if like the difference is 8,000, or 9,000 ticket sales versus like $5,000. It's a lot. And
even if you make the tickets more expensive for the $5,000, which is what the Coyotes did, right? Their tickets at Mullet were quite expensive per ticket, but it still doesn't quite make up for.
Sure.
Yeah. So
then everybody's got to, nobody's buying $10 hot dogs if they're not there,
right?
So anyway, David Gotlieb, to break it up a little bit. I labeled this one Mushu's favorites.
Yes.
What is Mushu's favorite treat?
I like to talk about,
spot in the house, and then chances of a new sibling. I'm gonna let you take over on Mushu.
Everyone check out my new Mushu mouse pad.
Oh my god, that's beautiful.
Yes.
It's beautiful. Never out of your sight.
Anyway, nope, never out of my sight. Mushu's favorite treat. Well, Mushu loves everything, all kinds of meat, but I think that her favorite is might be lamb. She really likes lamb and duck. So that's definitely up there for her. She always likes chicken too. So that's a go-to. A spot in the house, anywhere with sun. She loves to lay out in the sun. I don't have any pictures to show out there, but she loves to lay out anywhere where there's sun. Not too hot though, so she is not a dog that will survive outside of San Francisco. She wouldn't like it in San Jose, for example. It would be too hot for her. So San Francisco is perfect for her. So when it's warm in San Francisco, that's perfect for her. A good 70 with nice sunlight, nice heat. She loves that. And chances of a new sibling, unfortunately, no, I don't know if that's gonna happen. All my attention is paid toward this dog.
To Mushu.
To Mushu.
Long live Mushu. Anyway, next one's about me.
Yes.
Does Keegan have pets? Hey, too. You guys have maybe
Keegan's made a guest appearance on a podcast.
Yes, you guys have probably seen Emily on the podcast. Emily is the cat who sometimes sits on my shoulder. She's adorable. We call her Perfect Little Lady. That's her nickname because she is perfect. So that cat belongs to my fiance, but it's our cat. And then when we moved in together, basically she brought 2 pets and I brought 2 pets. So she brought a dog. His name is Kai. He is very cute, very fluffy. He's like a 15, 20 pound poodle, chihuahua, shepherd mix. He's very cute. One day he'll get on the podcast. And then I brought 2 pets. I have my 2 boy cats. I've had them since they were this big. A funny story, an ex-girlfriend of mine, we were living together. Her cat had gotten out and got pregnant because that cat was never fixed, and then came back and delivered 4 kittens, 2 of which she has, and 2 of which I have. So literally had these kittens since they were born, and I love them to death. Their names are Tristram and Dalgar, which is from a video game, from Diablo, the video game. Also not named by me. This was named by the ex-girlfriend, but now they're Tristram and Dalgar. But they're my boys, and I love them so much. They're very good cuddles, good cuddly cats. They also fetch. I taught them how to fetch when they were really young, so you can throw a treat and they'll bring it back to you. Yeah. Not a treat. If you throw like a stuffed animal, they'll eat the treats.
Yeah, it's not coming back to you. Yeah.
No, it's not coming back to me. They were also very fat at one point. They've lost a lot of weight. We put them on diets. They have special feeders and special diets. So
all 4 of them get along.
Yeah, they get. I mean, the 2 boys will because they're brothers. They kind of smack each other sometimes, but nothing too bad. And then Emily will occasionally bully Kai, the dog, just because Kai is kind of a big pushover. So if Kai gets in her way, she'll just kind of smack at him a little, not with claws, but just like a whack. It's pretty funny.
Your cats have not appeared on the podcast. Are they camera shy?
Yeah, no, I can't. Well, I close them out of the room every time I do the podcast, except for Emily. Sometimes, because she's so small, we'll sneak under a desk and then pop her way up here. But I close the boys out because they would be on my lap or on the laptop the entire time. Yeah, so maybe one day we will bring them on the podcast. I'm going to do it. They're very good boys. One day. All right, next question. This one is from a familiar name, actually.
Yes. Yeah, Josh, you can just text me these questions.
Yeah, so Josh Frojelin.
But it is a good question, though. It's a good question, though.
It is a great question, and I would say more than a friend of the show, contributor to San Jose Hockey Now.
Yes, and Josh helps us put the video clips together of the podcast that you see that I post. That's Josh putting it together for me, so thank you, Josh, for that.
Thank you, Josh. He asked, seemed like you both follow the CUDA very, very closely down the stretch. How would you rate the likelihood of Ethan Cardwell making the Sharks roster? What's the likelihood he makes his NHL debut pre or post trade deadline? Do you see him as a guy who would play as a bottom 6 or a top 6 role? Also, I read a super cool profile on him by a super cool writer midway through this season.
So Josh wrote a terrific profile on Cardwell mid-season, so you can find that at San Jose Hockey Now. Just search Cardwell or search for Josh's stories there. Great story. Yep. He talked with Cardwell himself. It's a very good story.
Yeah, and I've loved Ethan Cardwell as a prospect for a couple of years now. He's evolving too. He's gaining more offensive tools to his game. I really like him. I think there's a chance, and I've always seen him as a bottom 6 energy plus some secondary scoring role, like a guy that could fit into that role. I don't think the skill level is really there to be a top 6 guy. But that's okay. I think based on where he was drafted and everything and his size, if you get that out of that, I think it's a great pick. And he's a good player too. He's not just can fill in. I think he has a possibility to be in a bottom 6 role and play well in the NHL.
Yeah, I tend to think of him that way too, as a guy that probably ends up his ceiling is more third line than a second line. But he is a guy that I would be surprised if he made the team out of camp unless he has a fantastic summer, which is possible. Based on what I saw at the end of last year, though, if it goes kind of a gradual, normal curve up, that I don't think that quite means that he breaks camp with the team. I would expect more that he might be a guy that would be a post-trade deadline kind of, or late in the season fill-in kind of guy, debut kind of guy. You never know, though. But that is not saying anything against him as a prospect. I think that he's a guy, again, not a high ceiling, but he's a guy that has some traits of kind of a winning player. So it is possible that he's a guy that could be on a bottom 6 of a better Sharks team. And that'd be great to have, because you have your high-end guys like your Celebrini and whatnot, but you need good depth players, and he might be one of them.
I suspect next year that he takes a bigger offensive role, I think, on the Barracuda.
Oh, sure, for sure. Though, they might need him especially if Bordeleau and maybe Gushchin are gone.
Yeah, maybe Gushchin. He's going to be down there with maybe B-Stat. I think it'll be an interesting team to watch. I do think he'll get a call up next year, and he will finally be he will, how do I say this? His podcast will finally be complete, right? It's the Showbound podcast, and he will be bound for the show when he makes his debut
at the show. Exactly. Yeah.
I think
exactly.
I think there's a very good chance he makes the NHL at least for a game or two, and then that's an amazing like progression of his career.
Sure,
like from
absolutely.
The
I forgot that I think was overage fourth round pick,
rounder.
maybe, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yep. Yeah. Fourth rounder, overage, drafted out of the Hockey E10, which is like the third
low
Swedish
like
league.
Second level Sweden or third level? Third level. Right? I mean, second level is Allsvenskan. So yeah. So.
Yep. So
all right,
great story.
I'm gonna fiddle around with my lighting a little bit, by the way. So go ahead.
Okay. I'll keep. Do you want me to keep reading?
Oh yeah. Keep going. Yeah.
All right. Great. All right. Mike asks, if one of the top defensemen is not available at 14, does it make more sense for San Jose to trade for an established but young NHL defender? Would help put talent around Celebrini earlier, but not sure who would be available for the trade at that value. That is tough. These, young established defenders that don't come on the trade market very often, especially ones that can move the puck. So, yeah, I think the only one that's ever been in talks recently, he's not even established, is somebody like David Jiricek from Columbus. And that was pre-Jarmo Kekalainen getting fired. So right. I don't know if the new Columbus GM, whoever it's going to be, wants to start off by trading like maybe a good young defender for a draft pick and restarting this whole process for Columbus. But that would be an immediate thought that I would think of. I don't know who else is out there. What do you think?
There's maybe Jacob Chychrun too.
Yeah, Chychrun. Is he in the last year of his deal coming up? I think he is.
Maybe, yeah. And he has a very team-friendly deal. So his next deal might be not so team-friendly. So that's something to think about. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, it does make sense. A guy out there.
Yeah, there may not be a guy right now. There could be a guy, you never know, by the middle of the season or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But it definitely does make sense that with the Sharks' timeline and also I think their desire to compete a little faster, not like super fast, but just a little bit faster than totally tearing it down and just giving it to the prospects and just seeing what happens. I think a good comparison is to try to match the timeline of Muku Madulin, maybe.
Sure.
And so, because they need another, definitely, we'll talk about this more, but they definitely need another future top four defenseman besides Muku Madulin on the team. And Muku Madulin I think there's expectation that Muku Madulin is able to be a regular in NHL next year. So somebody like a Jiricek, David Jiricek is a good age comparison, a good fit, and that sort of timeline fit. So I think I asked you this earlier. Would you trade the number 14 pick? Because I think number 14, there is a good chance that there are sort of the 5 or 6 defensemen that everybody's talking about, right? Levshunov, Salayev, Parikh, Buyam. Missing a couple others, right? Dickinson, right? Yeah. And then Yakimchuk is a guy that might not be like, he's like the 6th guy on that list, right?
Yeah.
Would you trade number 14 for, let's say, a David Jiricek? Because at 14, you may not even be able to get into those top 5 defensemen there, and you may miss on Yakimchuk too. And I know a name that a lot of mock drafts have the Sharks picking because he's probably like the next defenseman in that group, and he's maybe only not in that top 6 because of injuries, is Adam Jiricek, David's younger brother. But David Jiricek probably has a higher ceiling than an Adam, I guess. And so would you trade number 14 straight up for David Jiricek, better timeline guy? And obviously Columbus will be able to recoup a lot of the value of a David Jiricek with that trade like that.
If everybody else was gone, and if it's only Yakimchuk or Adam Jiricek left, and there's no like other super high ceiling forward, like Yzerman's gone and Hellenius is gone, and like guys that I really like on forward, I would. I think it's a great fit. Sharks need a prospect like Jiricek and
he's right-handed, right? Mukmadulin's left-handed, so
he's right-handed. He's big. He's got he's got a lot of the traits that they're looking for, and I think he matches, like you said, he matches the timeline really, really well.
A little
so
better,
I would
right?
do it.
Yeah, then Adam Jiricek. Let me ask you: are there any other defensemen that you see kind of in that 14 range? Yakimchuk might fall that far, at least based on what we're seeing with mock drafts.
Yeah.
So obviously, Adam Jiricek is expected there. Who else might be there?
I mean, that's when it opens up, right? Like next is like
Adam
Henry,
is sort of the last one. Okay.
Adam, there used to be Kivi Haru was around that site, but Kivi Haru hasn't had a good. Right? He's fallen to like the end of the first or whatever. Mm-hmm. Henry Muse was kind of mocked at least in the late first. Cole Hudson's now probably going to be a late first or early second. Mm-hmm. But there's like this middle gap once you get past the 6-7 defenseman that like the chunks out, like the 15 to like 25 range, it starts becoming just forwards. So, or like theoretically just forwards, I would say. So
Adam Jiricek too strikes me as somebody that, because his season was cut short by injury, I think his last game of the season was the World Juniors, right? Mm-hmm. And so if he does well at the combine, he shows at the combine he's fully recovered and whatnot. He's a guy that could maybe pop right back into an area where the Sharks can't pick him.
I think he's got he always struck me as more of when comparing the two players as prospects. David Jiricek was more of an offensive leaning defender with worse skating and worse defensive sense. His brother's a better skater, but worse offensively and better defender. So he's more of a two-way D rather than like an offensive D. And I think the ceiling on David Jiricek was always considered to be a little higher than Adam, just because of the offensive traits of David Jiricek.
But I mean that Adam might, if he shows that he's healthy, might get into that half, I call it the sweet six of the defenseman. He might be the seventh guy there. And those guys might go all before number 14, right? That's possible, right?
A lot of them have super high ceilings. Yeah, there's going to be like a run, or theoretically going to be a run around that. So it might be Adam Jiricek. He's mocked in a lot of things to the Sharks, and I wouldn't be mad about that. I think he's a very solid defender. It's just risky, right? Like he was injured a lot of the year, and he wasn't having a good year, at least, to some other standards in his Czech men's league when he was playing. So it's risky. It's tough. I would, if David Jiricek was offered, I would go with him, but.
Right, but if he's not offered, though, and like I said, there is even a possibility that Adam is gone by 14 and Yakimchuk is gone by 14, right? So it's a good question. One thing that I don't know if anyone asked about this, but I know that a lot of readers on San Jose Hockey Now, they've sort of suggested somehow moving up to get your desired defenseman, but I'm not it's possible, I guess. I guess like the most appetizing thing the Sharks can trade is probably their second round pick, right? They're 33. Or was it 43, right? So packaging that to move up a couple spots is possible there, or maybe more than a couple spots.
Yeah.
I think people also mentioned attaching Bordeleau or Gushchin, but I don't, you can, but I don't think either of those prospects are high value prospects at this point.
No.
So
yeah, I think it would have to be like number 33 or whatever.
Yeah.
To move up into like 10 or 11 or something. And
who is your target? Obviously, Lashunov will be gone probably. Salayev will be gone, right? But
if people are
let's say you
worried
get into
about
9 or 10, who would you?
I think if like you assume that Dickinson goes because every NHL GM loves Sam Dickinson and the way he plays, you assume Bouilliam's
and
gone.
Bouilliam's probably might be gone too, just based on his
amazing season,
his Frozen 4 performance, right?
Yeah, you had to, and his World Juniors was amazing too. So you have to assume he's going to be gone. So realistically, it's going to be down to like Zane Parekh, which I would do if he's there and you're worried he's going to leave before 14. Because he offensively.
Well, he's gonna be gone before 14, right? So we're trying to move into the top.
That's what I'm saying. So like, if you're worried he's gonna be gone before 14 and he's there at 10, I think that's worth it. I would do it.
You would trade 14 and say 33. We haven't looked at the draft pick value, so maybe something else will come back to the Sharks. But
14 and 33.
Essentials of the deal, right? Okay.
I would. I think he's the last of the extremely high upside defenders.
People have mentioned Ryan Ottawa as a team. Oh, my. People have mentioned like Ottawa as a team that maybe they are a little bit full up on defensemen, so they might be willing to move that pick, move back a little bit, right? So,
are they at 10?
They're a little higher. I think they might be like 7 though, so that might be pretty high. But let me double check.
And are they picking before Calgary? Do they have the opportunity to snub Calgary of Tisha Ginla, which would be just like an ultimate smack in the face?
Yeah, they're ahead of Calgary. Yeah, Ottawa is 7, Calgary is 9.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like 14 plus 33 still doesn't get you 7. I don't know why.
No, I don't think so either. But let's just take a quick look. Let's look at Dom's draft pick value since we're talking about. I am curious. What 14 and 33? What that means, generally speaking. Okay, let's see. I'm pulling up Dom Lucian Athletic. And okay, so he has 14 plus 33 equals to 7.7 GSVA, which actually gets you to number 6 according to his chart.
Oh shit! So, all right.
So well, maybe.
Maybe.
So yeah. And if you want to throw in a Bordeleau or a Gushchin as a sweetener, maybe that helps put it over the top, just a little more value for the team acquiring.
The other thing to think about is that Ottawa has to forfeit one of their next 3 draft picks in the first round. So they're not forfeiting this one. They already said that. So
that's a good point.
Maybe that means that they really want somebody at 7, or maybe that means that they are willing to like deal to get more high-end picks because they're not going to have one in 25 or 20, one of 25 or 26, depending.
Right.
It's the Evgeny Dadonov thing or whatever.
For what it's worth, Utah at 6, that's obviously the Coyotes and Bill Armstrong, who the Sharks made a deal with, the reverse deal, where the Sharks traded number 11 for 3 picks. So maybe they would consider that, though. I guess though, in terms of for TV and for the new city or whatnot, you probably want the best prospect possible instead of trading back for more value. So, that's for another article, another podcast. Just the teams that might be the most willing to kind of deal.
Yeah, if you get up to like 6 and get like Booyam or Dickinson or whatever.
I mean, it does look like 14 and 33 is pretty good value, even if it doesn't correspond exactly to Dom's trade value. Like getting to number 6, that seems pretty high. But even if you get to like say 8, you can have kind of your pick of the defenseman. You won't at least you won't lose all of them at least. So that is interesting.
There's thought that I wonder what Grier would do if Anton Silyaev is available at 14. I don't think he will be because he's big.
Yeah, he's a guy that's. I mean, there's talk that he could go over Lushunov, though that's not likely, right? But so that's
still
hard to see him at 14. But I guess though that if somehow 14 and 33 does get you, let's say 6, right? That maybe Celebrini could be there for that. So
I'd do Booyam if he's there. I don't know if he's gonna. I would love Booyam.
Well,
Booyam would be just.
I know most people most of people online, but people love Celebrini 6, 7, right? So
yeah. I think didn't Bob. Somebody put out Celebrini really high recently.
I think Bob McKenzie the scouts had him. Had him. I think just behind Lushunov. He would have been right after Lushunov among the defensemen.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, actually, he had him ahead of Lushunov.
2. He had him at 2. What the heck?
Yeah, he had him ahead of him, right? Yeah, and so these are 10 scouts. 3. He had him at 3. Demidov was 2. But Celebrini, then Lushunov, then Dickinson, then is it Peric or Peric?
I don't know. I think I've heard both people say both. I think it's Zane. I think it's Zane Perek. I think
Perek. Okay. Booyam.
I think.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yakimchuk is the last defenseman. So that's Bob McKenzie's most recent top 16, I believe, and Bob top
who's 14
10
there?
Scouting directors. Beckett Senek.
Oh, Beckett Senek.
Yeah.
He's very good. He's had a good playoff.
Yeah.
Which is
he's having a good playoff. He's a big guy, right? Winger, right? So but
big winger.
I know everyone wants a defenseman for the Sharks, though. So
yeah. I think it's gonna go on like you're gonna run out of your centers. Celebrini is Celebrini, Hellenius, Catton are probably like the guys that are going to go.
Sure.
And it's, questions of whether Hellenius and Catton are going to play center at the NHL level. And then there's a ton of wingers and a ton of defenders. So somebody I honestly think that a guy like Chet Luchenko is going to go higher than people think because he's like a center. He's not big, but he had an amazing, or he had a good tournament, and he's a very underrated prospect, I think.
Right.
He's a riser, and people love risers. But yeah, the draft opens up after all the defenders are gone and the high end forwards kind of start going. It just opens up like crazy.
So the Sharks should be, if they stay at 14, they should be in position for a high-end player. It just will probably end up being a forward, though, right? And so that's what they may not want. But anyway, to answer Mike's question, though, just to sum it up, I think we did answer it. But yes, it makes sense. It does make sense to me to target talent that is a little more ready, because Celebrini might be a little bit more ready. Eklund looks ready, obviously. Mokumadulin looks ready. So yes, so instead of project guy, it does make sense to try, whether it means trading up or trading number 14 for a established NHL defenseman or a guy on the cusp like a David Jiricek. That all does make sense. Yeah,
I would not be against it if there's somebody that's worth it there. I wouldn't want them to do it for like a stay at home 28-year-old guy, but if it's like a 22-year-old right shot, good offensive potential,
sure. I think they know that, but next question.
Yep.
And we don't have, this is a long one, so we don't have to read everything that James R asked here, but basically
kind of boils down.
Yeah.
Is it crazy to think the Sharks could swing a deal for Mitch Marner? Boom. That's the bombshell drop.
Right. And Mitch Marner has 2 years left or 1 year left after this year?
1 year left after. Well, 1 year left now.
1 year left. Okay.
At 11
close
million.
To 12 million, right? 11.7 or something like that, right?
I think it's 11 flat, isn't it?
Is it 11 flat? See. Okay.
He has 1 year left at no, it's 10.9.
Oh, okay, 10.9. Okay, lower than we thought. Okay. And James R did have a couple of good comps here in terms of maybe there's a reminder of Jumbo's situation in Boston before the Bruins traded him to the Sharks. I know that it's easy to forget now because Jumbo is so beloved in San Jose, but in Boston, I think there are questions about his, fair or not, there are questions about his maturity. Was he sort of just a producer of points without that sort of that gumption that you need in the playoffs? Again, I'm not saying that these are fair critiques, but these were criticisms that Joe Thornton faced early in his career. And not that dissimilar to what Mitch is facing in Toronto. Also, too, that Toronto, closer to Boston 20 years ago, it can be a harder market to play in when you're a highly paid star that's not quite achieving what is expected of you, as opposed 100%. To San Jose. San Jose being a place that you can kind of hide a little bit more and not be in the spotlight as much. And that actually might help you produce more and embrace the community more. And that's what happened to Jumbo. And maybe that could happen to Marner. So that's an interesting comp. And let's not forget too that Marner would have to approve a trade, but for the reasons I just mentioned, that maybe a trade would be appetizing to him to a place like a San Jose. So the basic question is, any chance, and what's your sense of what it would take to get him? And that's a big question. And I haven't dug fully into it in terms of the value, but you and we talked about a potential trade. And so I'm going to start with that. We can talk about other things, Marner, in terms of timeline and that sort of, if he really fits the timeline. But would you trade William Eklund, Mario Ferraro, and the Sharks number 14 for Marner and some kind of not a new contract, but some kind of tacit agreement between the two parties? Like, okay, unless it's a disaster here, I'm likely to resign. So
I personally wouldn't, but I think it comes down to and we talked about this too earlier, but it comes down to a question of timelines, right? Like, Marner's going to be 28. He is already $10.9 million player.
Right.
He's going to command probably a little bit more than that on his next contract, somewhere in the 11s, 11.7, 12 million, something like that, I'm sure. And I just don't think that a older-ish, he's still young, right? He's still like in his prime. That you're going to pay $12 million winger is what the Sharks need right now. And I think it makes some sense for Toronto, that deal, but not like it might even need more than that.
It's not even a great deal. It's not a phenomenal deal for them, right?
Yeah. And you hope that, you know that Marner's going to produce more than Eklund will next year, but then you got to re-sign him, and I don't think the timelines match up just yet. I think you need somebody a little younger. If Marner was 24, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
I tend to agree. This is a better trade maybe 2 years from now. Not necessarily with the same names associated, but a 27, 28-year-old in his prime 2 years from now, not happy in his situation, wherever that's at, that could be a better fit for the Sharks at that point, because at that point you'll have a very good idea of what Celebrini will give to you, what Will Smith, what he's going to be in the NHL. You have a good idea about those guys, Mukumadulin, a better sense of Eklund and all those guys, right? And also the tertiary pieces, guys like Cardwell, Bordeleau, Gushchin, maybe one of those guys, Thrun, right? Maybe one of those guys will kind of emerge too in that mix too. And so you have a better sense of what your team is and its potential. And then you can make that decision like, okay, maybe we need a 27-year-old guy in his prime to put us over the top, to get us to the playoffs. And the Sharks though aren't at that point. So I think that this is a year or two too early. But in terms of just the package though, I think that it's going to be maybe a little less, maybe a little more. Granted, Marner's contract and how expensive he is, that's going to lower his value a little bit. The fact that he's going to be a free agent, that lowers his value a little bit. But on the other hand, though, Marner is a very good player. I know that not a great playoffs, right? But, taking away sort of that recency bias, Marner is a good two-way player that is a threat to put up 100 points. That's a valuable player. So he's gonna get a bit in a market there. But I would say be prepared though when the Sharks do make a deal like that the Sharks fans that you might have your heart broken a little bit by who they trade, whoever that happens to be. So
yeah, I think another thing to remember is Toronto is lost in the playoffs like I don't know how many years now. With every year. Every year. And just to put it into some perspective, how far the Sharks are away from even being that team. Like John Tavares would be far and away our best center with like a bullet right now. Morgan Riley would be our best defender with no question at all. And they have Austin Matthews, who's at least, he's very likely to. I don't know.
Potlin might be better than Samsonov.
Maybe, but they have William Nylander, who's a better forward than anybody that the Sharks have currently on their roster.
Basically,
and they have Austin Matthews, who's a 70 goal scorer, whatever the hell.
At least maybe 6 players that would be better than everybody on the Sharks, I guess.
Riley's so what the hell does adding Marner to this group?
That's fair.
So even if you got Marner, you have to imagine that Celebrini is going to be as good of a center as Austin Matthews, which maybe, but there's no guarantee of that. And then you still don't have.
Next year though, if Celebrini gives you 2020, I think you're thrilled. If he does that, he shows that he's ready for the NHL, then you're thrilled with that. But those aren't Austin Matthews numbers, and so Marner's going to be doing a lot of lifting.
For
to
years.
Get the Sharks to 60 points.
For years. And
so it does seem quite early. Yeah, it does seem quite early.
It just doesn't make sense on his timeline and the position. I don't think it's worth it. I'd rather keep Eklund and whoever else. Unless they're giving it away for free, then screw it. Yeah, but they're not going to. So they're going to get somebody if they trade him. I think they trade Tavares at the end of the day somehow, but who knows? Tavares has a no movement clause, and also Marner has one, I think, too. So
they both do.
So, who knows? They're going to do something drastic. They have to, right? The team can't just keep losing every year.
Yeah. But how about Tavares as a cap dump? How does that work?
I'd love that. I don't know if he would want to come to San Jose, but
I doubt it. But he's only got 1 year left though. Huh? Okay.
Yeah. So both him and Marner.
Oh yeah, because he signed a 7-year deal. He didn't sign he wasn't. Right. He was a free agent. He wasn't with Toronto at the time. That's why Carlson's deal is a year longer, because Carlson was with the Sharks. So, okay. So Yeah, but then again, Toronto might just be like, well, we'll just let him walk as a free agent, right? And just
Yeah, maybe.
bank the savings there. So I don't know if they'll just dump him, but anyway.
Yeah. All right. I would say put a pin in it, but not a very big pin, like a very small pin that might fall off and you forget about it.
I think a couple years from now, a guy like Marner would be interesting a couple years from now.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. This is from Sharkzilla, who says, to Sheng, our draft lottery sleeper agent, any thoughts on pushing out an article on what some of your non-Shark sources say about our current prospect pool, factoring in Celebrini, or how our rebuild is going post-lottery? Also to Keegan, thanks for the live stream. Also to celebrate the win. It was great. I had a great time with everybody. They hate us because they ain't us. That's
they
also
hate
part
us
of
because they ain't us.
Yeah, that's also part of his comment. All right. Yeah, Sheng, what do non-biased sources say about the Sharks? Because I'm going to say great things. But
yeah, it's something that I'm not going to do it right now. I know that people will be interested in it, but I'm going to wait till preseason. You never know what's going to happen in trades or also obviously after the draft too. Like not just Celebrini, but who the Sharks pick at number 14, who the Sharks pick at 33 if they make those picks, right? Those guys, those three prospects might be guys that all fold into the top 10. So I am really excited to see what the Sharks top 10, what my preseason list is going to look like, because it may be the only list that includes Celebrini, because Celebrini might be great. I like to do a preseason one and a post-trade deadline one. By the time we get the post-trade deadline next year, Celebrini might have graduated already. So it's going to be, it might be the only one that Celebrini is a part of. And so I am excited to see, like, I just for fun though, for just speculating now, like it's a great list, right? So at least, especially up front, you have Celebrini as your clear number 1, Smith as your clear number 2, and then we can debate Musty or Mukhamadullin as your 3 or 4, right? And then 5, any number of, you could be your 14th pick, it could be Beasted, it could be Edstrom's in that picture too, right? So it's a very exciting list for sure.
Yeah, I think you got to think about it maybe as like the best prospect pool in the NHL, to be honest.
Like, I would say my debate with, or my argument against that though, is that it's not very well rounded. It actually looks, it's funny enough. We're talking about Toronto. This looks like the future Toronto Maple Leafs. It's all forwards pretty much, right? Mukhamadulin's decent, but if Mukhamadullin ends up as Morgan Riley, you'd be thrilled if that's, and I don't know Mukhamadullin will be that good.
No.
And so that's your best defenseman though. And you have no goaltending right now, at least not a high level goaltending prospect. So it's very, very top heavy, very, very upfront heavy. And so I would say that would be my one drawback. If you want, what do you call it? Balance. It lacks balance. So yeah.
I think the benefit is that like the past couple drafts, the guys have all graduated to the NHL. So like, everybody is, like Logan Cooley's in the NHL, Leo Carlson, Adam Fantilli, Connor Bedard, Matty Beniers, everybody in the top end of the draft so far for other teams is in the NHL. So like if you're just talking about like best pool that's not in the NHL, if you do a U23, I don't think the Sharks are number 1. But if you do like a prospect as in like they're not in the NHL, it might be the Sharks.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. If you, this is just spitballing, but if you do a preseason top prospects not in the NHL, the Sharks could be 1 and 2. It could be Celebrini Smith. It could be. I'm not sure who would jump up ahead of Smith in terms of hasn't played in NHL yet, right? So it could be. So
could be. I mean, like the people hold off like love for like Michkov and Demidov and stuff like that, but
right. Oh, okay. I would say that maybe Michkov and Demidov would be there. I don't think. I think in this draft, Smith could go number 2. He would be up there for sure, right? Yeah,
I think
he'd be in the conversation. At least
because he's a center
over Demidov or over Lushunov, even over Lushunov, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so, like, if you just do a break about that, it might be the Sharks.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of defenders on it.
Right. Not a lot of defenders, I guess, that are outside of NHL that are
true
of that kind of prime quality. At least I don't think so, right? I'm trying to think about last year, right? Reinbacher, but Reinbacher is not considered an elite defender. So
yeah, Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault, but they're kind of like lower down.
Right.
But they're probably still
I think
top
Smith
10.
is still ahead of them.
Yeah, I think so. All right. These are some interesting questions from Stephanie K. Any further thoughts or ideas on what the last straw was for Quinn?
Yes, and this one I'm not going to answer fully. I just want to tease that we have a fantastic interview that we did with Nico Sturm, where we asked Nico a lot of the hitting questions about David Quinn. And the reason why I want to talk with Nico is because Nico is always candid. And even if he can't say everything, because obviously he still has to protect the locker room, all that stuff, I felt that his answers were very, very insightful. And so that's going to be coming out next week. And I think that I'm gonna leave it at that, and that we can talk more about Quinn after that. But I think that interview will be a big part of it.
Yeah, Nico's always very insightful, even when I don't know if he's just without even trying to be. He just provides an insight to the daily life of an NHLer more than most NHLers do, because NHLers are hard to talk to, either because they're shy or they're not good on camera or they're have pre-programmed answers, whereas Nico thinks about his answers. And
Nico, what he's doing for the summer, he's gonna really tell you everything he's gonna do during the summer to get ready for.
He's very detailed. Always like Nico, and good luck to him at the Worlds right now. I saw they won their first game, but I don't know. I haven't seen any more.
Didn't they play? They played Will Smith today. I watched.
Yeah, I didn't watch.
I watched Will in the first game against Sweden. I thought, even though he didn't play a lot, I thought he looked pretty good.
Supposedly Will Smith had a good game. I didn't end up watching it, but
against Germany he did. Cool. Okay.
I didn't watch it. No. But I read some things online that people said he had a good game, but I didn't watch it.
Okay.
I don't know. He didn't put up any points, I don't think. But
yeah.
Anyway, I should catch a game. Stephanie also asked, Sheng, how does it feel to be the belle of the ball? Meaning the Sharks are picking first. There's a high-profile player that they're picking. It's the last in-person draft, and it's at the Sphere, which is expensive. You're going to be the Sharks' most predominant journalist there, aside from me. So how does it feel to be the belle of the ball?
Well, no, I don't feel like the belle of the ball. Again, I don't make the pick. I'm not the player. Mm-hmm. There's going to be other Sharks journalists there because this is the number one pick. I think that if it wasn't the number one pick, there might not be as many people around, but because this is the number one pick, there's going to be a lot more coverage from the Bay Area side. Also, it's Vegas too; it's a shorter trip, so I think that's all going to play into. I will not be the only Sharks reporter there, which in the past drafts I can say that I might have been the predominant or whatever reporter there, but in this case, I'm not so sure about that. But anyway, so no, I don't feel like the belle of the ball at all. So, but still, though, it's going to be cool to be a part of. Though I am very excited for it. Excited to go to Sphere. It's not the Sphere. That's one thing I learned from. I think Gary Bettman said, or somebody from NHL told me when I was in New Jersey for the draft lottery. He said it's actually not the Sphere. It's just Sphere.
Wow, that's dumb. I'm not going to pay attention to that at all.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe you should say anything about it, right? Because my credential is still in the balance.
Okay, no wait, so Gary, it's great.
Well,
it's a great
name. Gary. That's Sphere calls it Sphere. It's Gary Bettman.
They don't have any
name Sphere or the Sphere. That has nothing to do with Gary.
Yeah, but Gary's the one who's going to approve our media credentials. So Gary needs to.
Well, I don't think it reaches up to Gary. I'm pretty sure Gary has no idea.
Right on Gary's desk right now. He's staring at a picture of my face and your face. And he's going. He's going to make a Gary Bettman joke and be like, approved. That's it. No, I'm excited. Hopefully everything goes well. I will be flying across the country and having a grand old time in Vegas. With you and hopefully JD and everything. So it's going to be great. All right. Stephanie's last question is, how do scouts view Celebrini compared to other recent high picks and young players like Leo Carlson, Adam Fantilli, Logan Cooley, Wyatt Johnston, Brooke Nance?
Because we talked about this. It's hard to compare. Like Wyatt Johnston was a lower pick. Rube Hintz wasn't he like a second or third or late first? I don't know.
Second.
But yeah, so these are maybe not the best. I guess the best way I can ask people. But what I did ask a scout though, and this might interest you, Stephanie, and it's something that I asked early in the season when we were trying to get a sense of Celebrini's value. And the time when I asked this question, I think it was before the season. Celebrini's stock has definitely risen because of how
Mhm.
good a season he had and winning the Hobie Baker. Not because he won these awards, because he showed on his way to winning the Hobie Baker just how good a two-way player he is and how much he cares about that. At a level of play where he could have just been all about offense, he wasn't.
Yep.
And so anyway, I asked where Celebrini would go in last year's draft. And when I asked this question preseason, people said, well, maybe he would be in the mix with Fantilli and Carlson ahead of Smith, but it wouldn't be so clear where he would go. He might be fourth in that mix. Whereas Celebrini has such a good season that I think it's still a debate. I'm sure there are teams that would still take Fantilli or Carlson over Celebrini at number 2.
Yeah.
But Bedard is still the clear number 1. But I think that there's more of a groundswell of support for a Celebrini to be a number 2 in if he was in last year's draft. So the scout I asked said that Celebrini would be his clear number 2 in the 2023 draft. So just give you a sense of how his stock has risen and just where his value is. Something else that I've seen around that I am interested in. This will also actually help kind of answer the question. Maybe this might be someone else's question, but the Athletic had an interesting article about where Celebrini ranks among the last decade of number 1 draft picks in terms of just the hype at the time. And so they reached out to a number to scouts and whatnot that are familiar with who have been around the draft the last decade or so, right? And so where does Celebrini fit into the hype machine, kind of? And obviously, the last 10 years, McDavid is your clear number 1, Bedard is your clear number 2. You have Austin Matthews, I think, as your clear number 3 there, right? But then after that, it becomes a little more debatable. And so on this list, at least, Jack Hughes was number 4, and Celebrini was number 5. So ahead of Darlene, who I remember being very, very hyped. Power, who I didn't remember being that hyped. But anyway, Power is number 7. Heischer is number 8. Lafreniere is number 9. I don't know if there's any recency stuff. This, I think the question that was asked, and I think this is Corey Pronman. I'm sure he asked it properly. Like, at the time, what did you think?
I feel like Lafreniere was hyped more than Power.
Lafreniere might have been maybe that more of a fan thing because Lafreniere was a forward, big scorer, but maybe among the scouts though they saw a little more. Anyway, the one thing that I think all scouts agree on: McDavid as the most hyped prospect in the last 10 years, and Slafkovsky as the least hyped number 1.
100%. Yeah, I agree with that.
But Celebrini being number 5 is a pretty healthy finish, though, I would say, though.
Yeah. I also like it's interesting because like I think people do forget how good the top 5 prospects were for last year's draft. Like just insanity how good they were, and it still would be a healthy debate, but for me between Fantilli, Carlson, and Celebrini. Fantilli even outscored Celebrini like on a points per game basis in college in their draft years. So I think Fantilli had
just barely,
a much better team. Just barely, yeah.
Yeah.
But Fantilli had a much better team around him too, like comparatively. Like BU was pretty good, but they weren't like Michigan good that Fantilli had during his year. So I don't know. It would be a debate, I think.
Who would you pick? Would you pick Celebrini ahead of Fantilli and Carlson?
Yeah. Just like gun to my head now, I think I would. Beginning of the year, I think I would have picked one or both of them above Celebrini.
Right. I think that's watching him, the general scouting shift is around that, too.
After watching him, Fantilli's not as well-rounded as Celebrini, and Celebrini has a lot of similar skills and a lot of room to grow, I think. So, yeah, I like him. I'm happy we got him. All right, next question is from Timorous Me.
Yep.
Sheng, we know you don't root for the Sharks as a media member covering them, but how exciting was it for you to be there to see the Sharks win the lottery, knowing that this means you get to cover Celebrini and your job gets a lot more interesting?
Well, let me answer this question, because I did get a lot of people asked me on Twitter, and I didn't answer them. Sorry, it was a very busy last few days, but they asked me in general that when I heard that the Sharks got the number 1 pick, how quote unquote happy I was, even though I'm not a fan. And I'm trying to first of all, my first feeling was just surprised, just because I was still trying to read all the combinations. I was behind on it. I did not realize. I I realized when Gary announced, when Gary asked Scott Clark, the EY auditor, when an EY auditor said it, that's when I, oh wow, okay. But in terms of my feeling at the time, though, I think a lot of it is really, and this is hard to explain if you're not in the job that I have, but I just thought it was really cool to have this information, even though I couldn't share it. I had this like world changing for Sharks fans, world changing in the NHL, since obviously in the perspective of what's really happening in the world, this is nothing. But in terms of the NHL stratosphere, NHL ecosystem, this world changing news, and I knew it an hour before anybody. And that was just really cool to kind of have in my mind, even though I couldn't share it. And as a reporter, it does grind at you that I can't share it. Like, just like I was complaining a couple weeks ago that I held on to the David Quinn firing news for a day or two too long, and so I was not able to be the first on that story, right? Because that is a big part of my business, to show people that I'm first on stories, and that does actually make a difference for dollars and cents in my living, to be honest. But there's also that balance of not rushing and being very careful about saying something. But it was really cool to have that knowledge. I was happy for Sharks fans. I think that is really cool. It's well deserved. One of the things that I thought, I wish I had tweeted it, and I know Sharks fans would have loved it, and I was slow. Now it's sort of too late. But there's that great picture that Dean Tate, San Jose Hockey Now photographer, took of the two fans with a "This is our year" sign that you might have seen around. It's one of Dean's favorite pictures of the past year, and we just put a story out on that in San Jose Hockey Now. Dean's favorite pictures from this season, and it's a great picture because, to me, I see fans. This was in the middle of the season after the Sharks were dead last, and to me, they look like fans that are being ironic, and maybe this is our year meant the year for the number one pick. The way Dean saw it was that these are just fans just being kind of maybe ironic, but they were just talking about the Sharks rallying back and making the playoffs or something. I don't know. But for me, though, I saw in that picture Sharks fans and just how much they needed that injection of hope.
Sure.
And obviously, any prospect you draft that high, Lashunov, Lindstrom, would provide some degree of hope, but nothing like the number one pick. Nothing like the guy who was a junior Shark. Nothing like the guy that has a connection to the Bay Area through his dad, obviously, who works for the Golden State Warriors. And again, just the aura of the number one pick, just to get that. And there is maybe not a generational talent, but a clearly defined number one guy too. Like, this is the guy of this draft. Just like, not that he's at Bedard level, but Bedard was the guy of his draft. McDavid was the guy of his draft. Matthews was the guy of his draft. Like, the no debate guy. Like, this is the guy that you're picking. This is, if everything works out, this is going to be the guy that is likely to be the linchpin of your competitive franchise for the next decade or whatever, right? So anyway, so I was really happy on that side of it. And yes, of course, yeah, definitely was happy just for my coverage, because it was really, really hard this past year. And I've talked about this, that I covered an expansion team once, the first Golden Knights team, but obviously that team didn't play like an expansion team.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
So I've never actually covered an expansion team until now. I covered an expansion team this past year. No offense to the guys out there. A lot of those guys so great to deal with. A lot of those guys, I think it's one of those things where on a better team, they will look a lot better if they're in the right roles and that sort of thing, right? And I do think that of a lot of the Sharks players last year, but cumulatively, though, obviously they just couldn't put together. They weren't good enough. It's not on them. A lot of them, they tried, but overall, though, just overall talent level on last year's team was expansion level, to be honest. And expansion meaning the old days of expansion, like the Columbus Blue Jackets. Not quite the 91-92 Sharks, not quite that desperate, but I think that this Sharks team would have a difficult time with the Columbus Blue Jackets expansion team, the Minnesota Wild expansion team, like that era of expansion team. I think the Sharks team would have some trouble with those teams. I would actually pick those teams actually in a 7-game series. But so it was really hard year, watching a lot of not very good hockey. And
Yeah.
so it is fantastic to know that there is it's hope for, I guess, my coverage, that the Sharks will be back in the playoffs sooner than later, and I could be a part of that. And there's nothing more fun than the playoffs. So yeah, I think those are kind of the overall feelings, predominant feelings. Going back to Dean's picture, I didn't finish my thought on that. That I wish I had tweeted something like, "This is your year, Sharks fan." You know, with that picture of "This is our year. This is your year, Sharks fans. You deserve this," because you guys do. You guys, especially the guys who are still going to games, and guys who obviously who subscribe to my website, guys who listen to us at San Jose Hockey Now podcast, guys who just read SJHN stories without subscribing. This team is awful. This team is hard to read, hard to watch, hard to talk about, hard to listen to about, and you guys are still there. So you guys definitely deserve this sort of injection of hope, and that includes you too, Keegan, obviously as a fan too. That this means so much, right? The possibilities, right? And you never know. You don't put too much on a 17-year-old and put all this weight of expectation on him. It's not fair to him, but it is the biggest injection of hope that the fan base has had since the Erik Karlsson trade. I know that didn't work out. I mean, the first Erik Karlsson trade. I know that obviously didn't work out for everybody, but when that happened, though, everyone thought the Sharks were going to be winning a cup or two out of that, right? A lot of people did, at least. And so that's a long time without hope, without a huge injection of hope. And this one is definitely of that caliber. It feels like you've added a superstar, even though, again, he hasn't quite done that yet. And hopefully he does. So let's give the kid some space. But it does. It's a huge, it's definitely
huge.
A seminal moment in franchise history. And to wrap up the thought for myself, it was really cool for an hour to be the only guy, one of the only. There's only 21 people in that room. One of the only guys in the world to know that the Sharks world had changed.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when I was seeing your tweets and stuff. I was like, he knows, and I had texted you while it was happening.
At that point, my phone was in an envelope, so I couldn't.
Yeah, I was making fun of it on the live stream. I was like, I'm texting Sheng, but there's no way he's going to answer.
What did you say? That? No, that's funny.
Yeah, I did. It's in there. They were like, some people were asking, like, can you text Sheng? Can we know? And I'm like, there's no. Anyway, yeah, just the whole outlook of the franchise kind of changed, and it is a lot of pressure on him. And you're right, like you said earlier, if he gets in and puts up 40 points next year, I'm pretty stoked.
Let's not forget that Stamkos. I'm gonna say this a lot in stories, so just get ready. But Stamkos, Joe Thornton, very, very slow first seasons. No problem, worked out perfectly fine for those guys. So if he has
a bad hockey team, he's walking into. So
give him some time and space. Even if he decides to go back, give him some time and space. So it should work out.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Nimrod had asked a interesting question about Luca Cagnoni. It's our second Luca Cagnoni question today.
Yeah, we have basically one later on, I think. Yeah.
Oh, it'll be our third, right? Or is
it third? No, I think it's the first one on the list. We have one that's coming up.
Sure. We had talked about it earlier, but yeah. So Nimrod basically is asking, he lays out that Cagnoni could theoretically go to the AHL next year instead of back to the WHL based on their transfer agreements. So Cagnoni seems to have outgrown the WHL after scoring the most points for a defenseman in the last 30 years. What are your thoughts on where he should play? Would balancing his size what will be best for his development? Like back in the WHL or go back to the go to the Barracuda?
You have a stronger thought on this, so I'll let you start off before I.
Well, I think this is going to kind of spoil the guy that we're going to talk about later, but we talked about Olen Zellweger being a smaller guy, and Zellweger's taller than Cagnoni, and he went back for his D+2 after dominating his D+1. I think based just on his size and the way that he plays hockey, I don't like he might do fine in the AHL, but I think he needs one more year to really hone his offensive potential in the WHL. Yes, he put up the most points ever for a defenseman in 30 years, but I think there's a lot more to grow there. Especially physically and just he needs to take over games more as opposed to just being a good reason why he puts up a lot of a good reason why his team wins hockey games. He needs to be the guy, and I think there's still someone watching him in the WHL. I think there's still more there to be done. Basically, would be my opinion.
Is there a catch-all argument? I'm asking you this question. Is there a catch-all argument for guys like a Musty, even a Will Smith and Celebrini? I read people say, "Oh, they have nothing more to learn in college or in juniors," because you look at their point totals, right, and they're so gaudy, right?
Sure.
And there might be said that it might be true that they don't have a lot more to learn offensively in their leagues, or not a ton more.
Yeah.
But are there other things that they can they'll have more time to work out, especially in college, right? You have a lot more time to work out, work on your body. For Cagnoni and Musty, definitely improving defensively. They can do that at a lower level, right? As opposed to doing so in the AHL or the NHL. So is there an argument for that for all these guys that there's no reason to rush them?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for Cagnoni to get a little bit bigger, a little stronger. He's a great skater, but I think maybe a little bit quicker. He's got great mobility and agility, but he could be a touch quicker. So working on the physical aspects of it while also honing your defensive skills, I think it's better served than getting hemmed in on the Barracuda next year, who are probably also not going to be very good. And I don't think he's physically ready yet. Just from watching him. But who knows? Maybe he is. Maybe he has a great summer too, and he comes in and he does prove that he can stay with the Barracuda instead of having to go back. But
if
history says otherwise.
To Cardwell, I think a couple of years ago, that the Sharks held it, they kept him through camp and they let him play and they let him show his stuff, and eventually they decided just go back. Sure. And so maybe that'll be the case with Cagnoni, where they'll see if he has done enough over the summer. It sounds like what at least your perception is as he is right now in the playoffs, but that player is probably better served with extra year in the WHL. But if he has a great summer, right, next couple of months, by the time we get a training camp, maybe he shows that he is AHL caliber, and so he'll probably get that chance at least with the Cardwell path. Because I think Cardwell, they even had him play they even gave him an exhibition game, a Sharks NHL exhibition game, and before they kind of decided, let's send him back. And of course, Cardwell had a great season in his overage season. I think he won Sharks Prospect of the Year, had 90 plus points with Barrie. So granted, Cagnoni put up 90 points already, but
as a defender,
there's things he can improve though, right? Defensively,
100%.
Getting stronger, like you said, right? So, okay.
I just think it's too early. He's, he's an older birthday, so he's 19 already, and he will be 20 in December. So he is a little older for a prospect. But I think it's too early. I think he needs one more year. And
so
there's nothing to worry about if he does go back, because I think it's still going to be a few more years before he's NHL ready for sure. So I think there's no reason not to, I would say, to put him back.
Yeah, and I would just comment on Nimrod's specific question where he says, seems to have outgrown the WHL after scoring the points. So I would say to caution, like, just because you scored the points doesn't mean you've outgrown the league.
Yep. Yeah. I understand the argument though, because like he had an amazing season statistically. And he is a good player. I really do like he's a very high IQ hockey player. And I think that could carry him very far, but it's gonna eventually he's gonna run into a wall physically, and that he needs to build some avenues around before he gets to there, So, but he's a very high IQ hockey player, and is a great pick in the 4th round. All right, so Zeke had a couple very long messages.
It wasn't quite a question, so we're gonna try to make it a question here.
We're trying here, Zeke. At some point, you said, if I'm GM Mike Grier, I see if we could trade the pick 33 or even 42 for a first next year or the season after. So like number 33 for a contender's first round pick next year. And I don't think I've ever seen that kind of trade happen. Like, I don't think it makes sense a lot it makes sense for the Sharks, right? Like you get a first instead of a high second, and always first round picks have an air to them that makes them more valuable. But it doesn't really make sense even for the contender. Like, why would maybe not Tampa, why would Colorado want 33 this year instead of a first round pick next year to use at the trade deadline? Like, that doesn't compute. They use the first round picks for their capital to make their team better, and a 33rd overall pick doesn't make their team better in any way. So I don't see it happening. Doesn't really make sense.
It's an interesting idea in terms of the way Zeke presented it, that a team that doesn't have a lot of picks, and he mentioned Tampa, Boston, and Vancouver do not have picks in the first or second round. If they really like somebody at 33, that maybe they would think. And I would, one thing I would add is that this is not a chance to get an unprotected pick. There's no way, especially this day and age, there's no way like a Vancouver is giving you their. I'm not even sure Vancouver has their 2025 first, but let's say Vancouver did. There is no way Vancouver is giving you an unprotected 2025 first for a high second round pick. But if it's the extreme protection, which I've never seen, by the way, but if we're being creative here, if Vancouver is willing to trade you their 2025 first, top 25 protected, or even top 20 protected, would be more realistic, right? Like, could that happen? It's possible, but like you mentioned, it's not likely. They've got to really, really like somebody at 33, and usually when you get to that late in a 33rd pick in the draft, you're not going to like a guy that much that you're going to trade a first round pick for him. I mean, you're going to like a guy, but you're not going to like him that much, right? And so this is an unlikely thing. Obviously, it's an avenue to explore, of course. Like, it's no reason to rule it out, but I would not call it likely. I think what we talked about earlier in this mailbag about packaging 14 and 33 to move up seems a little more realistic than reversing it and punting your 33rd pick to next year.
Yeah, and I think he kind of mentioned that at some point as well.
Yeah.
So the second question was, Sheng, if I give you $10, will you buy me lottery tickets? And I guess this has to do with your lottery good luck charm.
Once again, I had nothing to do with it, win or lose. So, but it did make me think about, if you guys have seen this movie, It Could Happen to You. It's an old Nick Cage movie, and watch it if you like those kind of corny romance movies. I like them sometimes. And so anyway, the plot of that movie, if you're not familiar with it, is it's a young Nick Cage before all the different hair and weird things he did. 1994, Bridget Fonda, and Nick Cage is a good-hearted cop. Bridget Fonda is a waitress at a coffee shop. Nick Cage is at the coffee shop. Doesn't have tip money. He got some coffee, got some breakfast, didn't have tip money, and so he promises Bridget Fonda, "I have this lottery ticket that I just bought. If that's kind of a shicey thing to do, to go to a coffee shop and to buy a lottery ticket and not have magically not have tip money." But anyway, he promises, if I win this lottery, that I will give you half of the winnings. Okay, I'm gonna come back tomorrow. I'm gonna have your tip money anyway, and if this ticket hits, you get the half of the money. And there's all kinds of complications. Nick Cage has a gold digging wife / girlfriend, and of course that lottery ticket wins. But Rosie Perez, who is the gold digging wife girlfriend, is very, very unhappy with the arrangement that Nick Cage has made with Bridget Fonda. Turns out that Bridget Fonda and Nick Cage, that they're a perfect match. And
of course.
Anyway, it's a whole whirlwind romance. But Zeke, if you give me the $10 and I win, then I am willing to cut you in on 50% of it. Okay, so I'll give you the "It Could Happen to You" deal. All right, so
that's a good deal. You guys need to make a contract, so he can Venmo you $10 and then go buy a lottery ticket. It's a great idea.
The numbers were 2, 7, 10, and 11.
2, 7, 10, 11. Yep. I think 2, 7, 10, 11 are gonna live in Sharks fame for a while.
I gotta make someone suggested too. I gotta make that T-shirt that people have suggested that I make with the order of the numbers, because the numbers actually weren't 2, 7, and 2, 7, 10, 11 in order.
So it was like 10, 2, 7, 11 or something like that, right?
Right. The way the balls came out, I guess I'll look it up really fast because it's. I probably should actually get like Celebrini or Gary Bettman to sign my sheet. It'll be a cool giveaway. But the numbers the way they came out were 10, 2, and 7. And I love looking at the possible combinations from that point. And if you read the story that I wrote about it, the Sharks at that point were in the driver's seat. They had 5 numbers that could have come up for them to get the number 1 pick. But there also was 1 number that could have come up for Chicago to steal it, 1 number that Utah could have stolen the number 1 pick, 1 for Seattle, and 1 for Ottawa, I think. So anyway.
All right. Alaskan Ice says, Keegan, has it been an adjustment to you being a Sharks fan first and discussing things with Sheng, who isn't a fan primarily? Do you guys ever argue or have serious disagreements? As serious as hockey can get, I guess. No, I think it's interesting because Sheng isn't a fan of the Sharks, I guess. But Sheng also but he wants to have the Sharks do well. So it's kind of it's an interesting thing. It's not like you're actively rooting against the Sharks in any way. You typically like it when they win. So
yeah, I would say, because I know some reporters have been accused on, especially in other markets, right, like Philadelphia, or whatever, like feeding off the negativity. I don't think people would say that about me. I don't think I do that. I mean, some people have not liked, like, I repeat certain facts of the Sharks being bad.
Sure.
But that's what you do in stories, though. You can't assume that in every story that there's new readers to it. So you need to kind of represent that the Sharks are really bad, and this bad. They are I've said this fact many times, the second worst team of the Cap era. And because I have the assumption that I don't have the assumption that if you read my story that you've been reading all my stories all along. So you have to kind of restate those facts in the story. But I don't think I'm somebody that feeds off that negativity. So in that sense, though, yeah, I wouldn't go as far as say I'm cheering for them, but I want good things to happen to the Sharks. That's generally good for my reporting, for sure.
Yep. And I don't think we do disagree about things like, like player assessment sometimes, or like different strategies the Sharks are going about, and like what we think is going to happen with the Sharks sometimes. But I don't think we have like arguments. We just kind of go our separate ways, or we think about it for a future episode to discuss it, basically.
Yeah, I don't know if we've ever had a big one. The biggest one I can think of is that you were very upset with Quinn when the Sharks are off 0-10-1.
Oh yeah, I was very on the fire Quinn train.
Yeah,
which happened just 6 months later.
It actually ended up happening, right? So, and I've always been pretty reserved in terms of my criticism of the coaching staff in general. So
yeah, and I think that's true. You have a little bit more. What's the word?
Reason, rationality.
Rationality. No, I think it's more like you have a little bit more of not respect. There's a word that I'm looking for. Like you give like the management and coaching staff a lot more leeway, I think, sometimes, than I would, or you just kind of like have the benefit of the doubt because you've seen a lot of management groups and you feel like they're going in the right direction, I think. I don't know, but not that I disagree with that either, but I was really fed up with Quinn at that point. And I think Grier was too. Clearly he wasn't very happy either. Even though the Sharks got a little bit better comparatively than that towards the end of the year. And we disagreed about Mario Ferraro for a while, I think.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because you were on the Mario Ferraro train, and I came into the year not liking Ferraro as much. And I came out of the year, I like him better. So I think you won that argument overall. But no, I don't think we ever fight. Not yet, at least.
It's just hockey, guys.
It's mostly hockey. Speaking of player projections,
my dog is definitely cuter than yours, though.
Anna's gonna come on here, and she's gonna argue that to the death.
Well, that's what starts arguments, right? Yeah. So it's like a rap beef. It always starts with a woman, or what they say about like NBA player fights. It always starts. It's either because of a woman or because of a gambling, because of some kind of money issue.
Yeah, it's money or it's a woman. She's gonna fight you to the death over how cute Kai is, because he is cute. He's a cute dog.
You have mouse pads. You have mouse pads. Come on. Look at this.
Yeah. I swear we've probably got a picture of Kai in a drawer here or something.
Not that cute if it's in your drawer. Not that cute if it's relegated to the drawer.
If you guys don't know, every day I sit when we do the podcast, I sit at Anna's desk only because in my house, the side of the house that my office is on it doesn't get internet. So like whatever reason, my internet sucks. So I did a couple of podcasts with JD, like I was a guest and did some prospect stuff and in the very beginning, and my podcast sucked. Like I kept dropping and I would freeze because my internet sucks in my office. So I do all of it in her office. And she used to have a picture of Kai on her desk, and I don't know where it is. She's probably listening in the other room. She's going to come in here in a second and bring one in. But anyway, we'll find one. Or I'll go grab Kai at the end of the episode if we make it through all this.
We'll do a San Jose Hockey Now poll, right? And it'll be anonymous.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good one.
We only get one vote each, so I'll stuff it for Mushu, and you actually will get 2 votes. So you and Anna. So.
Yeah, I got Anna and I.
Yeah,
I think we're gonna be fine. These are my 2 boys. These are my boy cats.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, they're pretty much twins.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. They are.
Yeah, they're pretty much twins. Mm-hmm. Hold on, now I have to.
You don't have pictures of Kaya on your phone?
Oh, I absolutely do.
Okay, well there you go. Let's take a look and let's have a picture off. And we'll get to Michael's question next. But here's Mushu. We'll wait for Keegan to.
This is Kai post bath in a little. There you go. What do you guys think? This is Kai post bath.
Let us know at San Jose Hockey Now. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we got to create a poll.
All right. He's adorable. I love Kai so much. Oh, this is.
Look at this dog. Look at this dog.
That dog is very cute. I will agree.
It's so cute that you're not even looking at. You can't bear the cuteness of Mushu. You can't even look up at Mushu.
Look at this puppy. Look at his puppy.
That is very cute.
He's a cute pup. All right, guys. Michael K is our next question. We were pushing on 2 hours. We got this. We can finish under 3. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello, Keegan and Sheng. Thanks for.
Oh yeah, we have a lot of questions. So okay, yeah, we might run through a little bit here. Yeah. Okay.
When you discuss prospects on your podcast, you frequently say stuff like, "He's a good prospect. He's a great prospect. He'll be perfect for a 3rd or 4th line or a 3rd pair defenseman." Sounds like
Ethan Cardwell. Yeah.
You almost never say like he could be a 1st-line prospect or a top defenseman. It's because you don't want to pump people up before they prove it. Or do we have a problem? I like the way you phrase that. I think people. I do a lot of like retrospective stuff, and you do as well on prospects, and I think people have an overinflated opinion of prospects almost always. So I'm a very realistic person when it comes to what a prospect can be, and if they prove me wrong, that's great. But most of the time, I'm looking for the traits and the production and the qualities that make a top sixer or a bottom sixer. And then I kind of reason out where I think somebody's going to fall. And a lot of times, and this is just true of all players, they're on a curve, right? So like the best players, there's only 50 of them. The middle players, there's 250 of them. The bottom players, there's 600 of them. So like it's all on a curve, and you have to grade out the probability that your prospects meet that. And most of the time what ends up happening is, this guy could turn into a 3rd or 4th liner. Some prospects, I'm like, this guy's not going to play in the NHL. And sometimes I say that. Or sometimes I'm like, Will Smith has the ceiling to be a 1st-line center. Or like, William Eklund's probably going to be a top 6 forward. So it just depends on the prospect, I would say.
And I think you explained it really well, that there are just so few 1st-liners. There are very few top pairing defensemen. And so if you just fall for, let's use Cagnoni. I'm not criticizing Cagnoni, but you fall for his number and say, oh, those are 1st pairing defenseman numbers. Yeah, they are in the WHL, but that translation is really, really tough. If you look at all the defensemen that Cagnoni surpassed in terms of numbers, right? In terms of the the last 30 years, right? The one name I remember is a Mickey DuPont. What was Mickey DuPont's career in the NHL? It was nothing. And it's so just because you can do it at level, that translation is so tough. And so that's why I'm so personally so careful. So it's not necessarily that the Sharks have a problem. I mean, They don't have a problem now. They had a problem 5 years ago for sure, or 3 years.
Yes.
3 years ago, they had a problem 3 years ago because 3 years ago you look at their prospect list and you're trying to talk yourself into Noel Gregor, into Joachim Blichfeld, and guys like that, right? And then that's again why I go outside with asking for scouts outside, because they tell you for real that Joachim Blichfeld is probably not likely to make the NHL. If he does, his skill set, whatever, like if he's a good third liner that could pop in 15 goals, you're happy, or 20 goals at best, right? Which makes him maybe a fringe second liner. But this is like if everything works out with them, everything. And there's so many little things that a guy has to do to be a good NHL player besides shoot the puck, which is pretty much all Joachim, mainly what Joachim did well, right? But if that's your only skill, you're not going to make the NHL unless you're a 50 goal scorer, which Joachim is not at NHL level. And guys like Noah Gregor too, that everything works out. What can this guy do? But then what's more likely too? Because everything doesn't work out for a prospect. And so they end up, instead of being a middle six winger, Noel ends up being maybe a fourth line winger, a okay one, a decent one, right? He's obviously on Toronto now, who was a playoff team, which was a playoff team. And so it is a problem, I guess. It was a problem 3 years ago because there weren't guys that people would comfortably say, oh yeah, I think this guy's going to be a first liner. I think this guy's going to be a top pairing guy. But now it's different though, in a sense that you have Smith and Celebrini that people are comfortable saying first line. I think Musty, I wouldn't get so far ahead if people are saying first line, but I think second line, right? People are pretty good about that. Top six, right? Milkum Doolin, no one is saying top pairing, but people feel very, very good about, I see him as a top four defenseman. You don't hear that about all the Sharks defensive prospects. So it's a little rough defensively for them still. I like a Henry Thrun, but a lot of people cab him more as a very good bottom pairing guy. And the Sharks defense in general, Havlet, all those names, right? Not a lot of guys, Cagnoni, not a lot of guys that people feel good about saying this is a future top four defenseman.
Top four, yeah.
Yeah, and so that is problematic. So I guess to answer your overall question, yeah, for sure, I think neither of us like to pump people up, because it's not because we're trying to knock people down. It's because when you watch these guys, you look for things that translate, right? And it really isn't just points. And I know that's like a simple way of putting it, but I think people do make that mistake. People see Musty's production, people see Cagnoni's production, and they start penciling them into NHL lineups. And I view this example so many times, like Chmielewski, right?
Brandon Coe, like 2 years ago.
Brandon Coe, right?
Coe puts up a 100-point season, and he's a top six winger. And it's like,
Chmielewski is one I always remember, just because I watched Chmielewski and I looked at his production. I think the production is good at junior levels. It became good at AHL levels, but you look at something that doesn't translate, his skating.
Yeah.
That's just like a direct, like, it doesn't matter how many points you could put up at an inferior level if you cannot skate faster, if he's not a better skater. And so that's where you start to look for, I guess, when you're watching prospects in general. I mean, it could be any level, but for me, I have a better sense when I watch the AHL because it's a more mature level. So that's why I restrict my prospect analysis to the AHL, because I'm more comfortable delivering, I don't know, educated opinions on that league at that level. Lower levels, I have trouble kind of seeing what translates, what doesn't. So I don't like to just sort of, I leave it to guys like Keegan, who watch so much of it, or guys like Chris Peters or whoever, right, who make that's their entire career to watch stuff like that, or scouts, of course. So you start to see what translates, and even if the points aren't there, like what tools translates, and not just physical tools, but desire, right? How much they compete, how much they want that puck, that loose puck right there, how much they want it, and if they want it that much more than their opponent, and if that stands out, then okay, that's a guy that's probably going to play in the NHL because he has the physical tools, but he has that desire, that want for that loose puck. And so that's what you start to look for, and that's how you judge people. So it's not about knocking people down, but it's about just seeing what individual skills translate and not looking at the overall production. And so another great example of this is a Dylan Gambrell, right, who was so productive in the AHL. But when I watched them at the AHL level and at NHL level, you question, well, what translates here? right? And Dylan was not able to play fast enough pace, have enough pace to be a high level AHL player. He was a pretty basic AHL player in terms of his offensive sort of how he played offense. And so you could see that. And so that's why he ends up as a fourth line player at best at NHL level, no matter his production. And scouts can see that too. That's what scouts are looking for too. Scouts aren't looking at the stat sheet, looking at, oh, this guy has 50 points at AHL level. They don't care about that. They really don't. They are looking again at translatable skills. Like, does he play fast enough for the NHL level? Is he going to be strong enough? Does he want to compete high enough? To want high enough? Is he going to keep on trucking when he gets knocked down and that sort of thing, right? By bigger, stronger players in NHL, is he going to be bullied by that stuff like that, right? And so finally, again, do the Sharks have a problem? They don't upfront anymore. But yes, they still do have a problem on defense and of course in goal, because they don't have any high level prospects there. So
yeah, really good way to say it. We're not deflating their tires, but I think also for me, someone who watches prospects, I get excited when I see a guy that could be a bottom sixer or a third pairing guy. Like it's a win in most places in the draft to get that. So I get excited about it, as opposed to like, it's not like everyone has to be a top six guy. If we get one out of the 5th round pick someday, that's great. But I get excited just by getting a productive NHL player, a good one from the draft. That's what makes me excited.
And let's not forget,
and that's almost always a good outcome in the draft after like the top 25 picks,
right?
Honestly,
right?
After like the first round.
And I think people forget too that there is such a difference between a good bottom 6 player, a playoff caliber bottom 6 player, and a not playoff caliber bottom 6 player. So you think about Barclay Goodrow, that year the Sharks were able to flip him to Tampa Bay, and how good Barclay Goodrow was with the Lightning. That's an example of a bottom 6 player that makes a difference for winning. And compare Barclay Goodrow of that timeline, of that time, to all the bottom 6 players with the Sharks. I don't want to kill people, but Frederick Handemark, Yo Shellman, just guys like that. Right? Some of the names are already mentioned. Right? These guys are not good bottom 6 players. There is such a difference between a winning bottom 6 player at the NHL level compared to a guy that's just going to play a few NHL games and not make much of an impact. And so when you see a guy like that who has that potential, like maybe a Cardwell has that potential, right, to be a good bottom 6 player, right? That is actually really, really exciting. So it doesn't matter if he doesn't score 20 goals or he never plays on a power play, but if he maximizes his potential, he can be a contributing part of a winning third line, a winning fourth line, and that is super, super valuable.
Agreed. All right. Splash 114. The Sharks have quite a few defense prospects and veterans. However, they seem to be all of the 5, 6, 7 variety.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I don't see a number 1 or 2 in the pipeline, probably because there's not one right now. They have to go get 1 or 2 is this next part of this statement. The Sharks have done this successfully in the past. They've gotten Boyle and Burns and Carlson. Who do you see that would fit that bill, and what timeline do you give it?
Oh, I guess we did sort of answer this question, huh? Yeah.
A little bit. I'm wearing the Erik Karlsson jersey only because he turned in a number 14 overall, which is like half of our questions today about number 14. So it'd be funny to trade him back and get a defenseman for the pick that we got, Erik Karlsson. That'd be interesting.
Very big deal by that.
I don't know if there's anybody out there, honestly, right
now.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, we should talk about Juracek, Jake Chikrin, but they don't strike me as... I mean, I do think I like Mugudulan maybe more than other people, so I think Mugudulan at his best could be a number 2. More likely ending up in your middle pairing, but I think if everything works out, he has a pretty impressive skill package, along with size and skating, all that stuff too. But I guess I would ask you, just because we haven't talked about this, so we already kind of answered this defensive question. But if you don't see anybody on the horizon out there available in trade, we don't know, of course. Like who knew that Jamie Drysdale would be available, right? Who knows if he'll end up as a 1 or 2? But that's a guy that obviously has some draft pedigree and some potential. But barring somebody like that we don't know will become available. Do you think actually? Well, since we asked David Juracek, do you see him as a potential 1-2 guy? Or more
I think it's a potential 2. I think a potential 2 is definitely. I think I think he was drafted as that as well, so I think there's still that potential there.
Okay. And how about the Sweet Six of the 2024 draft? Any of those guys you see as 1, 2?
Yeah, I mean Levshinov,
Okay.
Levshinov, William if everything breaks right. Dickinson I think could be a 2 if because he's just very well rounded, and I think I mean I don't think that Celebrini has like any offensive ability, so I don't know how you'd make him on your first pair. But he is, he's a monster in terms of his physical makeup and his skating. So things could, develop. People like to use Victor Hedman as his example, as like maybe he turns into this. But
even Madulin developed to some degree, right? So
yeah. I think that's why you like this draft. Is there's a lot of high upside possible first line defenders, right?
Okay.
I think that's why everybody is excited about the top end of this. Like,
you don't see the other guys there because the names you didn't mention, like Yakimchuk or Peric, as like you see them more as middle pairing guys topping out.
I think their defensive games are not well rounded enough to. But they do have super high offensive ceilings, especially Zane Peric.
Okay.
But the projection's not as like clear in my mind as somebody like Levshinov or even Buyam. Like I love Buyam. I can't. I don't know. Like there's a lot that like, his style of play is not bad. He's got a good defensive floor, I think. But he activates a lot from the blue line and like cuts to the middle of the ice, and that type of thing might not translate that well. So. But he is super skilled, super smart too. A very smart player.
Okay. So it sounds like to put a bow on this question, or just in general about the defense, that in your mind, probably the most realistic way for the Sharks to get a future 1-2 guy is probably to package 14, to trade up basically, and that's their most realistic hope. Because obviously, when teams have those prospects, they're not likely to trade them, obviously, and so.
Or really just hope that somebody falls out. And I don't think it's going to be either probably Zane Peric or Yakimchuk that falls out.
But defense usually don't fall, right? Because defense is so valued there. That's usually a run forward. I mean, personally, my guess is that Adam Yurchek is more likely to go in the top 13 as opposed to fall to 14. That would just be my guess, knowing how much defense is valued. But
for sure. No, that's certainly fair to say. I think Yakimchuk could fall. I think he could be there at 14. I think that's a realistic possibility. I think Bob has him at 12. So
right. I know of the mock drafts I looked at. I just did a story, 7 mock drafts where they had the Sharks, the Sharks picking at 14. And I think that the only one that had Yakimchuk falling to the Sharks, and the Sharks didn't pick him in the Elite Prospects mock draft, but they had him Yakimchuk falling to 16. But that's only one though.
So it's possible. I just don't think it's the market right now, and maybe we need to do more research on who's available, and we'll know more.
That's fair. We haven't looked that hard at the defenseman that could be available via trade. I know we did an episode on free agents, but
I think maybe we do some more digging, because you never know who's out there, and maybe also some names will start to surface when it gets closer to the draft and free agency and stuff, and maybe something will come up. All right, Chris Braun says, if Couture is still out, do you think they try to grab another veteran center to help mentor Celebrini? And I want to say off the bat that I think now that so much has changed in a way, so much has changed.
The world has changed, yes.
The world has changed. Now that they're likely to have Celebrini, I think I would want to reverse my trade Mikael Granlund stance, because I don't want what's happening with Bedard to be happening with Celebrini, where their second best center on Chicago is Jason Dickinson.
Yeah. That's rough. Yeah, that's rough.
And like, I don't want to have Celebrini be eaten alive. I think like having Granlund at least soak up some of the tough minutes there is going to be really good for his development. If Couture is still out as well, I think you try and insulate him a little bit for this first year. If he comes out, obviously joins the Sharks, which is what's expected to happen, I would say.
Right.
So I'm reversing my stance about completing the Erik Karlsson trade. Keep Granlund for right now. Maybe the deadline you can trade him, but
maybe at the deadline, because that's one thing I would have said last week that I didn't. That what's the ceiling if you trade Granlund right now? You're not getting a first for Granlund. That's really, really unlikely. I know he's a good player,
Yeah.
but he's seen, again, if being realistic, he's undersized. He is seeing that on a really, really good team, he's probably ideally more a third line center. He can be
Sure.
your second, that's fine, but he is not going to get you a first likely. So maybe you're getting a second at first. Now, second is a valuable pick, but you're
Yeah.
really kneecapping yourself as a team if you lose both him and you don't have a Couture. And
Yep.
let's say you have Celebrini, you don't, you're still kneecapping yourself as a team competitively, and
Yeah.
you're kind of taking yourself into another year of like last year where the team is really expansion level. So, but in terms of okay, let's say Couture is out, I think it's still a good idea too. It does look a lot better with Celebrini in a picture. If you can kind of picture a Granlund as your fill-in 1C for now, and Celebrini as your 2C, and then maybe Sturm, and then see if Smith, you start him at center or at wing. It looks a little
Sure.
better, but I think it's still a good idea to. I would still prioritize defense more than anything for this team. To trade for a competent or to sign somebody who's competent to play in your top four. But
Sure.
after that, I still would go positional and still value a center over a winger, because if Couture does happen to be healthy, great bonus, right? Let's say Couture has not lost a step, that'd be great. And so you can protect Celebrini even more, and you can go Granlund, Couture, or Couture Granlund, and then Celebrini as your 3C, or you can still put Celebrini as your 2C, but then use Couture at the wing,
Yeah.
or use whoever you add. Let's say you add I suggested like a Pajot or a Yanni Gord, who has played a lot of wing in his life successfully. You can use him at wing, and
Sure.
that will help. That helps everybody. That helps Celebrini. That helps your lineup. So yeah. So I would still go with that, because I'm not saying don't sign a wing, but if you prioritize a wing over a center, that winger may not be able to transition to center if you need any help, you have injuries or whatnot. But if you get a center, he's more likely that you can use him at wing. He'll have more versatility
Sure.
if you get lucky and Couture is healthy. So yeah, I still think it's a good idea if you can get one of those guys that fits. If you can't get a guy that fits, okay, maybe you get a better winger then. But if you can get one of those guys that we mentioned last week that
Sure.
seemingly kind of fit the profile, then definitely go for that. Go for that versatility.
Indeed. I'm reversing my position. I think they got to insulate him a little bit for this first
Yeah,
year.
yeah. So I guess when you're thinking of let's go all in on James Hagens again, right?
Yeah, last year I was like, or
Okay,
without
fine.
knowing, I was like, it doesn't matter what they do; they're going to be god awful. So might as well
Yeah.
like get the most value you can,
Sure.
and have a team have Granlund the whole year, so they might pay you more for him. But
But now you have like Celebrini and potentially Smith, though. There is a more of an argument that, yeah, you really do need to protect these guys. I mean, you kind of
yeah,
left Eklund to the Wolves last year. Good that William, I think, has the mental fortitude to handle it. But
yeah,
that was a tough beat to give Eklund in
yeah,
his first full pro season.
yeah, for sure. All right, this one is fun.
We had to shorten this one too. So
We had to shorten this one. Cooper Chris
yeah,
asked,
yes. Hey,
with
Chris, how's
I'm
it
gonna
going?
I'm gonna outline it because if
Yeah.
I have to outline it. If you with Celebrini and also Will Smith joining the Sharks, and you find somehow a puck moving two-way D that can anchor power play one, a
Okay.
top
Let's
four shutdown
say.
defenseman.
Oh wow,
Okay,
he
go.
wants two defensemen. Oh, that's okay. Well,
A
let's.
top four
Okay, fine.
defenseman, a scoring
Okay.
winger for the top line, not a reclamation project, a middle
Okay.
six two-way center in case Couture isn't back.
Wow.
Can the
Okay.
Sharks be competitive to potentially sniff a wild card spot? Seem like
Let's
there's cap to
say
go wild with.
let's give real names to this. So
Okay,
let's say you get Brady Shea. That's crazy, but let's say you get him. Let's say
great.
you get your shutdown guy. Maybe
Zadorov.
Demelo. Maybe
Yeah,
who do you
maybe
have?
Zadorov or
Zadorov. Okay.
yeah. Let's
Okay,
go with
one of those
Zadorov.
guys. Scoring winger for the let's say you resign Duclair. Let's say, I don't know. You're not going to get
Sure,
Stamkos. I think that's kind of crazy. But let's just say you get like a Duclair type kind of guy for the
sure.
productivity, or a DeBrusque who
Yeah.
can fit into a top line and not hurt you. And let's say you trade for a Yanni Gord or a JG Pajot.
Okay.
Okay.
So then you're
we're talking wild card spot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's not include Couture isn't back in this scenario. So you have Granlund, you have Yanni Gord up the middle, you have Celebrini and Sturm. That could be decent. You're still weak at wing, obviously, because Duclair, DeBrusque, those guys aren't true first liners, but those are guys that can play on the top line if they're insulated, if they got the right guys around them. But you have
Smith on the
Eklund
wing.
still, Zetterlin. Let's say we start Smith at wing and he's productive. I think you do need to improve actually your bottom six wing. I know that there's a lot of guys you can get, but you need to have more reliability there, which the Sharks did not have. But you have Zetterlin there still. You had the Ferraro and Thrun and Emberson as your 3 through 5, which that is way more appetizing than Ferraro and Thrun as your 1-2, which is basically how the Sharks ran it this year.
So you'd have like Shea, Zadorov, Ferraro, Thrun, Emberson, and Mukamadulin, maybe.
Yeah, and then Vlasic will play,
and Burrows and Benning.
Yeah, in that group, Benning. If Benning is suddenly your 6th or 7th, that's actually not bad. Benning, I think, is a pretty good bottom pairing guy. And then let's say Blackwood and Vanacek are good.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking myself into it. I mean, I talked myself into 70 points last year, so I don't want to make that mistake. So I am definitely going to sell the Sharks short next year to be safe.
Yeah, you should. I'll be the one who goes crazy.
60 points. Yeah.
I'll be like 90 points. No, I'm kidding.
Well, obviously the problem though is acquiring all these players though. Like we mentioned, Shea, Zadorov, Duclair, and Pajot, let's say, right? So that's 4 legitimate NHL players. Honestly, if the Sharks get one of them this offseason, that'll be great because obviously a lot of these guys are free agents. They can sign in more competitive places and places that might pay them more. The Sharks, even though they have a lot of cap space, they may not say like, yeah, we don't want to give 6 years here to Nikita Zadorov, which is totally reasonable. I wouldn't expect them to give him 6 years. So, but maybe Zadorov will get 6 years from somebody crazy. Who knows, right? Yeah. And so, so if Sharks got all these pieces, and to me, Brady Shea, as I mentioned in the last podcast, like that's sort of like the dream guy that fixes a lot of things for you, but that guy's gonna be the top defenseman on the market besides maybe Brandon Montour, and so chances of pulling him in are highly suspect, very, very unlikely. And so you come out with, okay, let's be realistic. Let's say you get 2 of the 4. Let's say you get maybe not Zadorov, maybe you get Zadorov, maybe you get DeMello, right? Someone in that range, right? And maybe you get maybe you get a Pat Joe or something like that, or a Gord. Is that enough? That's not enough, right? So yeah, then that's more realistic. But that does make a more competitive team at least, though. So
yeah. I guess if sniffing a wild card is like sniffing it from like 2 miles away, or like, like when you could smell the skunk, but the skunk is nowhere near you.
Well, I would say sniffing, like if you're in it the last month into the season, if at the trade deadline you have a decision, like maybe we make a little run at it, we don't trade all our guys, or maybe we do trade our guys. Like you have to make that decision. Then,
you're not out of it by You're not out of it by Thanksgiving. I guess that's what you mean.
Or in the Sharks case this year, out of it by Halloween or whatever.
Yeah, Halloween. Yeah. All right. 2 questions from Finco.
Out of it by Columbus Day. So
these 2 questions by Finco will go pretty quick, I think. Have the Sharks hired anyone as a replacement Russian scout, or even just to take the lead in pre-draft interviews with Russian players?
Mm-hmm. And so I'm tracking that. So I don't know if they hired anybody, but I do remind people that they do have Nikolai Latikin on staff still. He is based in Ukraine, so it makes it difficult for him to go into Russia to scout, let's say, a Demidov, but he speaks Russian, and so any issues, so a lot of these meetings can happen on Zoom, no issue. And so I don't think there's a problem there in terms of just sort of for now. And so to even take the lead in pre-draft interviews, right? Let's say at the combine, right? You have you can bring Latikin over. You have Nabokov on staff still, right? So I don't think there's too much of an issue of that. And the second question.
Yeah, our second question is: has anything further come out regarding the lawsuit against the Sharks for the Kevin Whitmer investigation?
I have not seen anything there, and so that's something that I will dig on. We do have a guest in the future that that should be able to speak to that a little bit. But beyond that too, that's something that I will dig into more this summer.
Love it. Thank you for your questions, Finco. Alex Ganadinik asks, in Eklund's draft year, he was projected as high as... Yeah, I love this one. As high as 3 overall, as I recall. This is true. That suggests first line potential.
2, right? I think there was some thought that he might even go 2. No,
I think he was ranked. He was ranked 2 by Elite Prospects, and their guide. But yeah, like even as high as like 2 or 3, I think was a
maybe 3 is more likely to be. Powers and Beniers, I do remember kind of
Power and Beniers kind of towards the end of the year were like rocketing up. That's often college guys do. He was projected as, this is just first line potential, and for a winger, that winger has to be extraordinary to be so high. Now he seems to be referred to as a top 6 winger, which seems to be slightly lower. If you were to redraft that draft class, where would you take Eklund? And would Wyatt Johnston be number 1 overall? Interesting. I think what's interesting is I've watched Eklund a lot, and I think I'm going to plant my flag that I was the first one to say maybe William Eklund's more of a top 6 winger than like a first line elite winger, because it was like after
you were the first one to say that.
I feel like it because I said that
you might have been. Yeah, I'm not even questioning that. I didn't even remember like the fact that he was able to make his NHL debut immediately was pretty impressive, and he did show a lot of it. The body was obviously light, but you did see a lot of great hockey sense. So it was hard to tell, right? So.
As soon as he went back to Sweden, that year afterwards is when I kind of like was like, oh. And not again, I love William Eklund. I love him as a player. I think he's an extremely smart hockey player. His attitude is amazing. He has some great qualities that's going to make him a very successful top 6 NHL forward for a very long time, hopefully. But I do think there was so much hype around him that everybody was like, this guy's going to step, and it was fed into again by Doug Wilson Jr. being like, oh, this guy's ready. And then I don't think he was.
Well, he had actually Doug revealed that he had Eklund, I think, behind Beniers, so even ahead.
Yeah, like was number 2, I think.
Right?
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it was fed into that this guy's going to be a superstar, and maybe he will be, and that would be amazing. Because again, I love him as a player, but I think there is still like questions about all of his game to take that next level to really prove that he is a superstar and not just a very good, left winger.
Right.
So.
Right.
This question of where he would go in this draft, it also proves that this draft's had a little bit of a resurgence in terms of what it was viewed as. Because in 2021, it was like, oh shit, Owen Power's your number 1 overall pick. Like, why is this draft so bad? Like, it would never. Right. It wasn't like hyped up to the levels that 2023 was, or stuff like that, or 2020 in terms of the depth, at least in 2020. So yeah, I think if you're redrafting, I think Owen Power. This is what I would say. Owen Power, Matty Beniers, Mason McTavish, Luke Hughes, Wyatt Johnston, all are
in
above
top 5? Yeah.
In the top 5 in some manner. After that, it gets a little bit more discussion, right? Like,
how about Gunther? Is he clear above Eklund, or you think there's a little debate there?
I still like the way that Eklund plays hockey more than I like the way that Gunther plays hockey, but Gunther really did. He's taken off like a rocket.
Scored a lot of goals, yeah.
Scores a lot of goals, and he's going to be a good sniper for a long time. More in like the Travis Konechny or like who's another good one? I don't know. I can't think of another player to compare it to, but like a good goal scoring winger. Whereas Eklund's going to be more of a playmaker, but also contribute more two-way, I think, overall in the end of the day than Gunther will. So there's a debate there. I think Eklund still goes in the 6 to 10 range in this draft, and not above where he is drafted currently.
But so for you though, he probably falls. He may not be 7 though, right? You might have him 8 or 9 because when we talked earlier, you mentioned like Clark could go ahead of him, Gunther, Johnson.
Yeah.
But there's also an argument that he might go ahead of them too. Eklund.
Yeah, he might go ahead of like Kent Johnson or Simon Edvinsson, but I think he goes ahead of Edvinsson because I don't think Edvinsson's been amazing. But I think Clark might at the end of the day go above him because Clark has proven a lot. And I honestly, if you're looking back now, like if the Sharks had a prospect like Clark in their system and not like Eklund, it might be more beneficial
better
for
balance,
them.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because the Sharks have drafted so many forwards since 2020, so many. That's their balance is way off in their forward to defense. So again, this is all just not my teal tinted glasses. My teal tinted glasses tell me Eklund's the greatest, and I love him. And he did. He had an amazing improvement this year, and kind of proved that he's right for the NHL, and he's right for the role that he was playing. He's just got to grow into it more. And he's getting bigger and stronger and more physical.
And maybe he'll get more help too. So
yeah, and he's going to be good. Like we keep saying, like, what's a good top 6 winger? I think he will be a good top 6 winger for a playoff team eventually.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I agree with that assessment. That is that big difference. That he's not just like
not
empty
points.
Putting up points.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that I like William a lot. I think that he's going to be a winning player on a good team's second line. If he's on your first line, that could be fine, but I think he's your complementary player on a playoff team's first line. He's not the linchpin. He's not the guy on a playoff team's first line. There's nothing wrong with that. I've said it before. I think that on a good team, maybe Eklund turns out to be your 4th best player. Nothing wrong with that.
Agreed.
Yeah, so I generally agree. I agree with you. Yeah.
I said that when I made the prospect video for Eklund after I reviewed his year, he's somewhere between a first and second line forward, and I think second line is where he's going to fit. So
yeah, so I mean, we'll see if Eklund does have a great summer. So maybe he does kind of break into this kind of perspective top 5 or this retrospective top 5, right? Power, Beniers, McTavish, Hughes, and Johnston, which I guess is looks like a pretty clear top 5 in some order. So So he's still in a conversation. He definitely isn't a bust or anything like that. He's a good player, but he still has room to grow for sure.
Yep. And again, he's kind of fighting against the current because like Matty Beniers, Mason McTavish, Wyatt Johnston, they all they all like play a more important position than playmaking winger, right? Like they're all centers or scorers or good defenders or puck moving defenders or whatever. So
they have more help around them too. Even Anaheim, even though Anaheim's results aren't good, McTavish has better, more skilled players to play with too. So that helps.
Yeah, so Eklund's kind of like fighting above the current to make it above those guys just from how much they mean to their teams in the future. Like Luke Hughes and Owen Power, Matty, they're all going to mean so much to the core of those teams, whereas Eklund he will matter, but he's not the same type of player, I think.
Right.
That's okay. That's all right. I mean, it wasn't okay in 2021 when we were freaking out and we were like, who the hell is our prospects?
Right, because Eklund has been the number 1 prospect for the Sharks for the last two years easily, like without doubt. But now you can talk about Will Smith. You can talk about you can make a Musty argument. I would not put Musty over Eklund though, but you can make that argument. And obviously Celebrini. So yeah, things are definitely looking a lot better for sure.
Yeah, and I do like how much Eklund has rounded out his game. Was never bad, but I think he's just really worked on that end. So needs more improvement though, because obviously he was getting scored on every 2 seconds last year.
He has the worst. He has the worst plus minus of his draft class. I was just looking at that. And I think the worst in the league this past year. But I don't put that on William. So
nope. All right. Blue Science says, I'm a big believer in drafting best player available, but is this one of the drafts where it might make sense to take a D at 14 no matter what with how thin the Sharks D pool is? We've talked about this a lot, and that's also why I'm wearing this jersey. You know, like this is the story of this draft is what do they do after they get Celebrini, you know?
Yeah.
Like how do you make this prospect pool round? I think we've talked about this though.
We have talked about it in different ways, but I would say that I would not take a D no matter what at 14, especially if Adam Yurchek is gone. Your top kind of 7 defenseman. I think that again it makes the most sense that yes, defense is an absolute need for the Sharks, but try to trade up for that. It makes a little more sense to me in my opinion. And it makes sense too in the sense that like the Sharks forward group, right? Prospects pool doesn't really need a lot of additions, right? Because you obviously have the high end with Celebrini and Smith, but you have a lot of middle six potential there too, from a William Eklund to a Beasted to an Edstrom, and even guys that are wild cards, right? But who could end up there, right? Like a Bordeleau and a Gushchin, right? You have a lot of potential top 9 forwards there, right? But of course, you are lacking in top 4 defensemen. And so it makes sense, because if you keep 1433 and you draft more forwards, well, you don't really need more forwards. And at 33, right, you take a long shot defenseman or whatever.
Yeah, you take Cole Hudson or Kibby Hardy,
right?
Or
but
somebody,
it's such a long shot that
it's a long
if a team
shot.
is willing to make that trade, I don't know if a team would be willing to, but if a team were willing to make that trade to take your 14 and 33, that makes the most sense to me in terms of adding to that defense, instead of taking inferior. If you end up with the 14th pick and your defenseman isn't there, even if it's Yakimchuk or it's Jiricek, but if you're the Sharks, you don't like him that much, then absolutely take the best player there, be it winger, and you just kind of roll with it. And eventually, yeah, you might have to deal a winger off to help get you a defenseman, or a center off to help get you a defenseman, but you can push it off though. So it's not like this player you're picking at 14, you need that player to. It's not like the NFL. You're not going to put in your 14th pick into the league the next year. So you can kind of punt the decision a little bit.
Yeah, like I don't think they need at a certain point that you're right. They're going to need to stop trading like quantity for quality, Like they already did that once in 2022. And they at that point they needed to, because they needed something to hit, right?
Yeah.
But now we're starting to get more, not surefire hits, but more likely hits. So you need to start getting some more quality.
Right. That kind of made sense. Yeah, that's a good point, right? Yeah, when they traded number 11 back for Beasted, the system needed more depth, and at number 11, they didn't like. I know that you can look back now on their guys that they missed on number 11, but they weren't excited by those guys at that 11th spot, and that's why they traded back. So. So but now though they are in a different place as a system though. So I think
they need to start getting more, a little bit more. And you have to also, like, if we're mocking like all of these defenders in the top 10 or whatever, like guys are gonna fall out, right? Like you still have to get somehow. Macklin Celebrini is gonna have to get picked in the top 10. Ivan Demidov, Caden Lindstrom, probably Tisha Ginla at this point.
Probably Tisha Ginla at this point, right? Yeah.
Maybe Berkeley Catton falls out, and I would take Berkeley Catton at 14. And like, yes, he's 5'10", 5'11", but he's a skilled forward. But that's a great pick at 14,
right? Like or maybe really in terms of moving up, right? Like you don't like maybe 14 and 43 gets you into like say the 10th pick, and you can get one of those defensemen, and you can still keep your 33rd pick. I don't know, but there's different ways around it. But
if Consta Hellenius or Berkeley Catton or Cole Iserman or one of the defenders is available, I just pick them, I think, and be done. And one of them will be, like, very likely. Everybody can't go top 10.
Yeah, the Sharks are in a range, still in a good range still. Yeah, even if it's not for the perfect defenseman, it is for a good player before the draft kind of falls off a little bit. At least that's what people are saying about the sort of the high end of the draft. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that Berkeley Catton's gone all the way to 11, because at some point in this draft, I think I still like Berkeley Catton. Like he's dropped a little bit. I think it's the same thing that happened with Benson last year, because they're both like 5'10", 5'11". Are they center forwards? Are they wingers or centers or whatever? And I don't know. Both are good players. Benson was a fantastic pick at 14.
I'm at 15% of battery on my laptop, so we had to run through a little more.
All right. Recycle Shark has 2 questions.
More defense questions,
Fixing the defense. Sharks, which defenseman should the Sharks target to acquire via trade?
Yeah.
Or should they target big physical shutdown?
Go? I feel like we answered a lot of these questions last week, huh?
And this week.
And this week, right? Yeah.
So I would say Recycle Shark, listen back and also listen to last week.
But I'll be happy to recap for you, though. Thank you for asking the question regardless. But you can listen back. If you listen back to our episode last week about our off-season plan, I'll go into more detail for you. So, but I think roughly, though, we agreed that we let McDonald go. We let Addison go too. Did we both agree on that? And letting Addison walk? Okay. And in terms of improvements, we had pie in the sky ideas of signing Brady Shea or maybe Nikita Zadorov. More realistic ideas, and maybe signing DeMello or Chatfield. So those are a few guys out there in free agency. I also mentioned that in terms of trades of guys with not great contracts, but who could still help the Sharks out. St. Louis has a lot of defensemen there. Guys like Justin Falk or a Nick Leddy aren't great these days, but they're a lot better than what the Sharks have. And St. Louis might be happy to give them up and not ask for a lot because that'll save them. That'll create a lot of cap space for them. And so those are a couple guys that I would look at. And just in general, to answer the question about who they should target, I think that they need a little bit of both. I think they need good two-way guys. So I'm not really focused on just shutdown guys or just puck movers, because this team is, again, say it again, is really, really bad. And so they need guys who can give you a little bit of both. I think if you really want to make the team more competitive, they're not good enough to have kind of specialists and in a way, and they need guys that can give you a little bit of both, I think. And so some of the names that we mentioned here are guys that might be a little more offensive leaning, might be a little more defensive leaning, but they are guys that are a little more on the two-way side. And let's say, like, I love Brendan Dillon, love him as a person, love him in the locker room, love dealing with Brendan, but he's the example of a guy that I think is a little too defensive leaning, that he doesn't really help the Sharks enough, because who's he going to move the puck with? Erik Karlsson is gone, right? And so, and if you keep it Addison, who can move a puck, he has so many other deficiencies in his game that it really hurts the team, if he's, in my opinion. So I think you're looking for guys who can give you a little bit of two-way. So to answer overall that question.
Love it. And our second question, which is an interesting one.
We were asked this a couple times today. Yeah. So.
Where do you see Bordeleau and Gushchin fitting into the Sharks' future? Should Grier trade one or both of them? Personally, I don't see why you would trade them.
Well, eventually it might come to that, right? So
maybe, or to get a defender that you think is good, but I don't think that their value is worth a defender that you're going to get back. That would actually impact the Sharks' future.
Yeah, small offensive wingers honestly don't get you a lot in trade. I mean, we saw that even at the trade deadline, right? In terms of Sharks had all these wingers, right? Obviously, they had bad years too. But even I will go back to this. I know I said it so many times. Like Barrett Bonoff, even when he was being productive, he wasn't getting you a lot back. Again, these small offensive wingers don't get you a lot in general. And so, why would a Bordeleau and Gushchin, who have done nothing in the league, get you something when a guy like a Barrett Bonoff, who has done something in the league, won't get you much, right? And so eventually they might have to trade them, but maybe after they have shown that they can be productive and be players, and then they might have a little more value. Or like I mentioned, as sort of a throw in, if you want to move up or something like that, as a little bit of a sweetener to get a team to do it, then there's some value there. So
I think they do still have a future in the Sharks system.
Oh, sure, absolutely. They may have it, but they have to show it still. I guess that's my argument, that there's definitely not untouchable. 2 years ago, these guys were untouchable because the Sharks had nothing else in their system.
They're literally nothing.
Right? But they aren't actually untouchable prospects, though. They aren't of that caliber. These are classic examples of guys. No offense, I know you love Danil, but classic examples of guys that are overrated because they're productive, but they have really a lot of shortcomings in their games in terms of translation to the NHL, and shortcomings that you could see 2 years ago. And so I would say that just be happy that the system is deep enough now that you can think about trading these guys, and it's not the end of the world, because, well,
it was the end of the world 2 years ago.
So it was the end of the world, right? Yeah. So I think
both of them had, I honestly, I think I don't know what you get in trade. So honestly, the more likely outcome is that they become the more likely outcome is either they bust and they don't make the NHL, or they are like valuable pieces for depth forwards and middle six forwards for the Sharks, and both are one's gonna happen. So I don't think a trade is in the future.
They start scoring, then they have more value, right? But that hasn't happened,
and that's later down the line as well.
Yeah,
I still think both have the ability, and I think that there is.
I agree.
Definitely
I agree.
There are lineup spots that are available for the taking if they are able to grasp it. Both had good years, just in different ways. Bordelau's was very down in the beginning, and then got improved towards the end of the year, and Gushchin was kind of just very good the whole time, and had a couple of setbacks with injury and stuff. So I don't know. I still believe in Gushchin and Bordeleau. Just the clock starts ticking when you start to get past 21 in terms of
Sure,
how
absolutely,
how, how
absolutely. Yeah,
likely you
next year
are.
is going to be a huge year for them because I believe, well, for Bordeleau, it already is huge in terms of he's a 10-2 free agent, right?
Yep,
Not an RFA, but the Sharks have to qualify him, which I'm pretty sure the Sharks will. And then
probably.
Gushin has one year left in his ELC, so there's going to be a decision to be made. Who knows? Maybe he does go back to the KHL after this coming season if it doesn't quite
Yeah,
work out. But so it is. They both have huge summers, so maybe they come back and they're different. They're different people, they're different players, different body types, or whatever
yep.
in terms of this coming fall. And so,
Mhm.
so the future isn't quite written for them. But as you
For sure.
mentioned, yeah, time is definitely running out on both of them.
Yeah, it starts to tick a little bit, and I still love
Mm-hmm.
Gushchin to death, and I will always like heap on the praise for Gushchin. But I've noted his shortcomings for years, and if it
Sure.
doesn't eventually change, then he won't make the NHL. So
Right. Right.
that's the way it goes. Hopefully it does. He's still tiny. Still love him though. All right, have the odds of Will Smith signing with the Sharks this
Yeah.
offseason
Hey, Lakshya.
increased? Yeah, hey, sorry, Lakshya. I didn't
That's
even say
okay.
your
Yeah,
name.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, we're almost three. We're gonna be 3 hours, and we're gonna be
Man, we got to get
Lawrence
through this.
Arabia in on this one. So yeah, so we might have to run through questions a little bit, but
Have the odds of Will Smith
basically,
signing
though, yeah.
increased after the draft lottery? And do you think Celebrini comes to San Jose next year, or does he go back to BU?
So I do think Celebrini. I still stick with what I say. I know that you and I disagree about Smith. I think Smith does come. What I've actually seen in World Championships, just a little bit I watched. I only watched Sweden, but I saw a guy that looked fine against pro hockey, and I do wonder if he's kind of judging himself in practice now and whatnot
Yep.
to see if he feels confident at making a jump or not. And what I've seen, he's looked okay, and we'll see. It's still early in the tournament, but
Yeah.
I do think he comes, and I do think Celebrini comes. So I think they both come, and I could be wrong. I know that there's different rumors. My colleague Jimmy Murphy had a rumor. I also
Hmm.
guessed on our show that both might be going back. More likely Smith and Celebrini. And then Kobe Cohen, though, who is connected to the college hockey scene too, he seems to think that the draft lottery actually will help Smith in the favor of coming to San Jose.
Yeah.
And so he seemed to think that both of them are coming, and I'm more along his lines. I do think more that, but I could be wrong. I don't know for sure though.
I would be
I
ecstatic.
Yeah.
I would be ecstatic
I
if
will
both came.
say that with Macklin Celebrini, that a factor is his dad, and his dad as being so into development, athletic development, director of sports medicine and performance for the Warriors, that like if his dad doesn't think Macklin is ready, that I would think that Macklin, I don't think it's his dad's decision by any stretch, but that would have a lot of weight. This
Yeah.
isn't a random dad saying like, "Hey, yeah, I think you're ready," or "You're not." This is an expert of the field telling you that your body is ready or not ready for the big leagues. And Rick Celebrini has worked with the Canucks too, so it's not like he is basketball guy or whatever, right? So he
Sure.
knows what it takes for a hockey player body and that sort of thing, right? And so that's sort of a wild card there, where if Rick did not think his son was ready, that I'm sure that would be a heavy sort of consideration for Macklin.
Hmm.
But again, I want to stress that I don't think it's Rick's decision. I just think that when you have a guy in your corner, your dad, who is such an export in the field,
Yeah.
that you
It could
definitely should
definitely
listen to him.
influence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you definitely should listen to him. If he says like, "Yeah, I don't think you're ready. Another year might be good."
Yeah.
That should weigh. If it doesn't weigh a lot to him, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, that should weigh a lot to you
Yeah.
if your dad is an expert of the field. But anyway, the
I think,
overall though, I still tend to think that they both will come out.
yeah, I would be very happily wrong in thinking like that Will Smith is going to go back and he signs. I'd be super pumped to have both of them on the team
Mhm.
next year. So I still, I don't know. I just feel like Will Smith's going back and Celebrini's going to join the Sharks, but maybe not. Maybe they both
Okay.
come, and I would be super excited.
Okay, let's go on.
We got
We have
this.
a half dozen questions to go, and I got 10% left, I think. So
Oh boy,
11%.
Matthias
Going fast.
893 says, how would a comparison play out between Cagnoni and Olen Zellweger? Both were smaller,
All right,
5'9",
don't read
left
the whole
shot
question.
D.
Just we're comparing Cagnoni and Zellweger. So I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I
give it
think
to you because You're our prospects expert.
Like I mentioned in the previously about Cagnoni, it's about that like taking over games and that like dominance of things that Zellweger has had for many years, and even he went back for his draft plus 2 year, and like he just is offensively more gifted than Cagnoni, I think, and that's why I would say that he's got to go back. But anyway, the question is basically, what's the comparison? I think they create offense in very different ways. Zellweger is much more aggressive, activates more frequently, more than willing to go one-on-one against players, join the rush, that kind of thing, than Cagnoni is. Not that Cagnoni doesn't, but he's just not as active, I would say. And Zellweger has a little bit more physicality than Cagnoni does right now, and I think that's kind of the difference between the two. Even though both are great players, and that's why Zellweger is regarded as a better prospect overall right now. But could change. Another year in the WHL, ripping it and proving that he can really dominate would do wonders for Cagnoni. All right, Mike Grier free agent targets from Tony. What type of free agents is Mike Grier going to target to play with Celebrini and Smith? He's going to go with scoring, physicality. Also something we talked about last.
We talked a lot about last week on our offseason plan episode. But in general, though, I think that, again, it's not about one or the other type. It's about both. But I think that if you want to lean toward one, I think this one, though, I feel like the Sharks need more of the physical type, more than the scoring type. Obviously, you want somebody who can score a little bit. You had a great example last week of going after Dakota Joshua because he's a guy that can give you both. But I think you're leaning more toward that because last year you leaned more toward the scoring type, and none of those guys scored, and they had no B game, and your team ended up with 47 points. So if you end up with a more physical type, at least they can give you that for sure. And if they add on some offense, then your team starts to become interesting. And so I think that's what I would do, at least, and that's what I think. I think that's the direction he'll go into because obviously he's talked a lot about being a harder to play against team, and I think he went away from that script last off season, and I mentioned why, and Mikey Asimon, right? I went on the whole Mikey Asimon rant last week, but I don't think I think that Mike will learn from that mistake. That's my opinion.
All right, James says, do you foresee a scenario where both Smith and Celebrini stay in Boston and the Sharks keep on tanking this time for James Hagens? Would Hasso be willing to let this happen? I don't. The last part of that, I don't know if it matters.
Right. Well, because Smith and Celebrini's decision is their decision, right? It's not. It's not Hasso's decision, but I don't think that Hasso would want that for sure, though. And so I would say that it is obviously possible, but it's not. If you want like to give Mike Grier and Hasso Plattner the truth serum, that it would not be for them to go back and develop and have a shot at James Hagens, however good a prospect Hagens is. Honestly, the Sharks, even if Macklin and Will come out, aren't going to be that good. So they're going to have a chance at James Hagens.
Yeah, they will.
Right?
They're very likely going to be a bottom 5 team.
Right. They may not be the worst team in the league, but they're going to have a shot anyway at him. So I suspect that while, yes, you can see a scenario where they both stay, it's not because it's what Hasso or Mike wants. So we'll leave it at that. So if Will or Macklin were to say to Mike, hey, what do you think? I'm not sure. Do you think I'm ready? If you think I'm ready, then I'll come out. I think that Mike would probably say, yeah, I think you're ready, just as he has told us in interviews. And Hasso's not a talent evaluator, but yeah, I think Hasso was tired. Losing is going to happen, but getting embarrassed, I for sure. I think I don't know Hasso, like I said, but I would think Hasso is tired of that. So
yeah, I think Celebrini's ready. So that
I think Will's ready too. Will has areas to clean up in his game. But one thing that I saw in at least that snippet of World Championship was that I thought that physically he looked there. And even the skating, right? He's not an amazing skater, but he's I think going to be good enough. He's a better skater than Perreault, obviously. I think maybe even better than Leonard in some ways. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what you think about that, but I think that I liked what I saw in that small sample, and maybe he's going to be embarrassed at the end of World Championships that he's like, okay, he should go back. But from what I saw right now, I think that he'll be okay.
fixing his physicality towards the end of the year too. It's just he has up and downs with that.
I think he has the frame to do it though. That's what I'm saying. That he has the right now. I'm not saying like 2 years from now. I'm saying right now. I think he has the ability to kind of survive with his physicality, with his physical level at the NHL, right? Like obviously Ryan Leonard is ahead of him there, but I think that he's got enough along with his smarts and his skill set, his skills to.
I do need to watch a game of him because this is also like the first time he's been not attached to Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault and like
definitely.
with NHLers.
That's why I watched. I was very curious to see how he would do.
Yeah.
And
I'll catch the next game and see. Hopefully he's on a line that's good.
Yeah.
I know that JD actually was putting out some stuff on him too. So. David Rowley says, "Do we have a good attacking defense prospect in the pipeline?" No. If not, do you think Green?
More defense questions. Yeah, well, we have Cagnoni, right? So yeah, so let's
we do. And Mukabadulin.
Actually, Mukabadulin. Actually, people forget Mukabadulin is pretty good offensively, and I think that'll translate not into like a point per game, but I think he's going to be a pretty solid puck mover.
Yeah, he's actually good at joining the rush too, and he can rush the puck in a straight line very well.
He's better with the puck than without. Honestly. So yeah, so.
But do you think Grier targets one? I think so, if there's one available.
Yeah, to some degree. Though I would say though that all things being equal, that they might go a little more defensive defenseman, because they have a Mukabadulin who is a top four kind of two-way guy, but I think leans offense. And they don't have a top four leans defense guy, so
maybe they go with that Juracek, who's more of that like top four leans defense.
Yeah, or if they could choose between everybody, maybe they would take a Salayev over a Lashunov. I don't know, not that they'll have that choice, but just give me an idea of the profile that they might be looking for.
Patrick says, "Do you think that this draft after Celebrini ones where the Sharks start drafting?
I have 8% left. We're gonna be okay, guys. We're gonna be okay."
Where the Sharks start picking for need instead of just best player available as they start to fill out the future roster? If so, what's their biggest need? Blue line depth, goaltending depth, bottom six? I think it's blue line depth is the biggest need
I wouldn't say depth. They need high end.
Sorry.
They have actually depth, right? Yeah. So I would flip it to say they need high end defense. Yes, even if it's offense or more defensive, but they need high end defense. Goaltending depth is not as important in my opinion, because goaltending, as we've seen, you can just sign guys off the scrap heap and they can give you a 920 if the team is good enough around them, right? Yep. So I would say that a high-end defenseman is far and away their greatest. I would say far and away the greatest need.
Yeah, right? Agreed. It's definitely top pairing defenseman. Possibility is the greatest need.
I mean, it'll be nice to have a elite goaltending prospect, a Wallstedt in your system, but. Again, we've seen teams can get by without it. If you have it, that's great. That guy can get you into the playoffs every single year for the next decade. That's great to have that. But if you don't have it, if you don't hit on that on in the fifth round or the third round or whatever, right? You can, like you can still get by as a team, but you cannot get by as a team with zero top four defensemen in your lineup. Maybe Mary Ferraro, but not even probably, right? So like. Zero top four defensemen, you're not going to go anywhere. You can have great forward group. You can have a passable goaltending group like the Sharks have in Blackwood and Vanacek. If you have zero top four defensemen, you are going to struggle moving the puck out, killing plays, all you name it. So they absolutely, that is like far and away a future number 1, 2 type, even top four defensemen. Even if you can't get your future Victor Hedman or whatever from this draft, if you can get another Mukabadulin, that kind of level, that's going to help because you already have Mukabadulin. So that gives you 2 top 4 guys. And so that's a lot better than the Sharks had this past year. So,
yeah. This is our last question.
Yeah. Ooh, wow. We're going to go under 3 hours. Actually, that's a little better than I expected. Yeah. We kind of,
Matt Rilo
did a good job at the end there. Yeah, Temple.
Yeah, we're doing it. With Celebrini now added, where do you see the Sharks' many prospects lining up in 2 more years? Assuming none of the top ones are traded in the meantime, does that look like the core of a playoff team to you? Ooh. Now, yes. I think without Celebrini, it did not. But now I would say yes. It is starting to look like the core of a playoff team to me. The rest of the question's harder.
Yeah, I would say no until they get another defenseman in the picture that you feel good about. I think I do like I said, I'm a big Mukumadulin fan, so I feel good about him.
Yeah.
But you need at least one more, and then hope maybe Farrell sticks around, or Thrun develops, or you trade for somebody, sign
Yeah.
somebody. But I would feel better if you have at least one more to kind of make your core up to balance your team out.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be more ways that they're gonna skin the cat of solving the defense. I don't think it's all gonna
Sure.
come from the draft. I think they're gonna end up, like you said, signing or trading somebody or finding a way to make that happen when it's time. I
Right.
think.
Right. I just think it's hard though because defense is so valued. I guess that's
Yeah.
the point though, that you want to find a passable goalie that is very very easy in
Sure.
general, right? Right. But you want to find a legit top four defenseman. That's hard. It's hard.
Yep. Especially,
Difference
well,
maker.
you really gotta hope this 14th overall you're gonna find somebody, or 10th
I don't.
overall or whatever.
Right. Sounds like they have to. Yeah, they'll have to move up. Right. That's so. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another topic, but
Yep.
another
Or they should have
podcast.
just drafted Lane Hudson last 2 years ago.
Yeah, maybe,
Even then,
but
even then, he's just kind of
Lane
like
though with his he's not gonna do much defending for you though, right? And so that's a
no,
little problematic for your construction, right? So, but I mean,
yeah,
obviously, it will help though to have a
because they don't have
future
anybody that can
PP
actually
one
like,
quarterback.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, or at least
yeah,
like
that's true.
those kind of guys, like they fill in. They're not going to be your everything, but they fill in to help make sure that every line of your
What
defense
did
can
Lane
move the
go again?
puck. I think he went like 58th or something like that.
Oh wow, so the Havlet pick, right, could have been Lane Hudson, right? And then
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I
and
picked
then
Lane Hudson with
and then
the
Seamus Casey went right after Havlet
yep.
too. So they still went with they had their choice of small defensemen, and they went with the biggest one, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if
Yeah,
Havlet's bigger than Casey,
yes,
but
they famously they picked Havlid or Lund instead, and Hudson went 62nd. So I
well,
picked
yeah,
Hudson with
they weren't
my
gonna pick
Cameron
Lund
Lund
with
pick.
they weren't gonna pick Lund with the 34th pick though. So, I'm sorry, Hudson. So, but
I think it's I think that was a little short sighted, but you're right. They
I
probably
think you
wouldn't
think
have.
more about Havlet there because they had a defenseman in mind, obviously,
Sure.
and in terms of like size profile or whatever, it's not like they went with like a totally different kind of guy in mind. As opposed,
Hmm.
let's say like Beasted versus Coolidge, right? That's obviously they had a certain guy type of profile in mind with a Beasted that you're not going to get from a Coolidge, even if Coolidge hits.
Sure.
But in terms of like if Havlet hits, though, I don't know if the profile. I mean, obviously Hudson's more offensive, but it just seemed more realistic there. That's yeah. So that's something to explore. Why, yeah, why in that spot they
I
went
think
with
it's just because
Havlet.
yeah, I mean, and yeah, I think they were a little enamored by Havlet's like recent play before the draft. It was very good.
His
And they
competitiveness,
mentioned
all
that.
that stuff, right? They talked about,
Well,
right? Yeah. So,
but they mentioned I think he had just had a great playoff, and then he had
mm,
yeah, I believe he had a very good international tournament before then. I think it was the U18s,
yeah.
where he put up a ton of points. Yeah, he had put up 12 points in 6 games, the U18s, so very good. But and Havlet's still good, but it's just yeah, there was definitely people like did not like Lane Hudson just because of how tiny he was, and that's fair.
Like,
But
I guess though. I mean, you had to look at the things at a time though. Like, was there anybody that had Hudson ahead of Havlet at the draft day? I'm sure there were, right? Hudson over
yeah,
Havlet. Yeah.
so Havlet was ranked.
But Havlet
Bob
was generally ranked
McKenzie's
higher, though.
Havlet was 38th on McKenzie's list. Let's see
Hmm.
where Lane Hudson was. Now I'm really curious.
Yeah.
I think so Hudson was 40th. So 2 picks later
Oh,
than
it's close. Okay,
Havlet.
fair. Okay.
And he was 31 by Craig Button, 31 by FC Hockey,
Hmm.
25, but that's North American by Central Scouting.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So
That's you can't weigh judge on
so
that
somewhere
because
in the second was
they
where he
split
was
it up.
mocked,
Yeah.
but he went like 15, 20 picks even after like where
Mm.
McKenzie had him, you
Sure.
know?
Sure. Sure.
So, but yeah, he was pretty close to where Havlet was ranked. But I would have picked Hudson. As evidenced by the fact that I did pick Hudson at the Lund pick during the draft. I was so excited to have Hudson fall to that. I picked him with the Lund pick. And
then
did you? Kelly. And then I picked Kelly Odelius where they picked Havlid, which has not worked out for me, but that's fine. That's fine.
Who'd you pick with the Beastad pick?
Yuri Kulik.
Okay, Kulik. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
Hey, a cool 3 hours. Good job.
Right in 3 hours, guys. Oh my God. All right, everybody. This has been our longest episode ever. I think we said that last week, and now this is the longest one ever. Oh my God. It's going to be a nightmare to upload. All right, guys. I hope you all have a good week. We will see you all next week.
Yeah, we have a great Nyquist Sturm interview coming.
Yep, it's going to be great. Bye, everybody.